Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Welcome. The expanded budget committee meeting of October 13th. We have a couple of members. I see Randy and Travis are online with us, and there may be others. I'm advised that we're expecting 12 members to be present either on the floor or through Zoom tonight. And Kathy is with that understanding is noted that we would need 7 votes to pass any motion that comes forward. Normally at this time, we start with opening remarks and any announcements. And I'd like to ask Lisa Holmes and Norma Jane if they would provide us a short briefing on the fund balance. That's a discussion that will take place later in the afternoon and or early evening. And as we've gone through the deliberations, that's a topic that has come back to us several times. So given where we started at the beginning of the budget process and where we are after several voting meetings, I'm going to ask Lisa to bring that information forward with Norma.
Thank you, Lee. And so everyone in chambers has before you the updated multicolored sheet. At the top of it, it says as of October 13th. And I think Norma is getting ready to put it up on screen for those of you that are on Zoom. And we're looking down to the second half of the sheet where it says fund balance allocation line 23. And I'm just going to give you the highlights, and Norma can go into the details. She's the one that created this sheet that provides a lot of critical information in a very summarized fashion. But on line 23 shows us our net available fund balance. So that's taking into account where we're at over and above the 18% minimum required fund balance per our policy. So our calculated unrestricted fund balance at the end of 2021 was 62 million and change. And the keeping to our 18% minimum, anything over that 18% is what we have available to us. That's approximately 25.7 million. And then looking at line 25, the multi-year approved over target requests that are now before us in the as a result of expanded budget committee meetings to date. We've approved approximately 3 million multi-year requests. We're also putting about 3.7 million into the capital program. Another point in the multi-year requests is that we will be putting fund balance toward them for the next couple of years as well. Something else of note in the budget and in the capital plan over the next 3 to 5 years, we have $10 million in fund balance allocated to go toward capital. So just wanting to draw people's attention to this, and then to, if the multi-year over target requests are eventually pulled into the target funding, line 29 shows the potential deferred tax increase of 5.6%. Now, admittedly, not all of those multi-year requests will be pulled into target, but if they were, that is the end result. And Norma, you have other points you wanted to make to draw our attention to on this?
No, I mean, you basically laid it out. Just to keep in mind that, yeah, there's $10 million that we've laid out for the next 3 years that will go against the net fund balance. If in fact, let's just say for the sake of argument that we don't increase our fund balance, which is probably unlikely, that fund balance is going to continually, we'll be looking at potentially $7.3 million, for example, if we spend 10 out of that. And then the multi-year appropriations presently, if they're three-year, that's another 9 million. So just to on track for that. The other, I also wanted to, we didn't talk about the property tax growth, but in that line 16 through 22, I just wanted to also we're looking at potentially a 10% increase in property values for 2023, in July of 2023. So that will end up being roughly, if our tax rate stays the same, we're looking at somewhere around $125 increase in the tax bill from just based on the growth in the assessed value, which you have no control over. But just to let you know that that's kind of the net effect of, we see our assessed value is going up, and even when we're decreasing the tax rate, unfortunately, the taxpayers have a bigger bill.
Mike?
Just wondered, Norma, do you know what part of that is new lumber as opposed to reval on housing, existing housing in the businesses?
I don't. When I did check with Jay on this, and in general, we're looking at probably potentially 20% increase overall, but given having a more conservative look at it, it's 10%. I do not know how much is new lumber.
Okay, wondered if you did.
We have a question from Randy.
Yes. So this is based on the fund balance as it was at the end of 2021.
That's correct.
It doesn't include any potential increase in the fund balance for this year.
Correct.
That's correct. We go by the audited statements that come through finance, and that includes the year. It's based on the year-end revenues of the previous year, so we won't have those available to us to base the fund balance and the minimum amount on until the following year.
Okay, thank you.
Lisa, I cut you off when I recognized Randy. Did you have something that you were going to follow up with?
I did. I had one other stray thought, and which is how we calculate the minimum fund balance, which I just alluded to. It's the year-end revenues. That's the denominator, and you're multiplying it. You're looking at 18% of the year-end revenues. Given the fact that our year-end revenues tend to increase annually, to maintain a minimum fund balance of 18%, that numerator is going to have to increase annually as well. So that's not a fixed, that 18% isn't a fixed number. That will need to increase as our budget increases.
So each year when the revenues go up, that 18% goes up accordingly with those revenues.
That minimum, to meet that minimum requirement.
To meet
yes.
the minimum requirement. Thank you for offering that. I see a hand from Arel, and then Ann. Did Arel have a question? Okay, well, maybe he's just telling us he's here. Ann?
Thank you. So for what you were just talking about, that line 23, is that what you were just talking about, the net available fund balance? So you're saying that's 18% of actual revenues?
No, that's the difference between, so we had roughly $62 million in overall fund balance. And 18% of the, okay, $202.4 million in actual expenditure, actuals for the end of the year. 18% of that was about 36.4 million.
And this is over the 18%, that line.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. This is the net.
So our
Available.
printout here saying it's 18% of actual means, or
Net.
maybe there's more,
Available.
net available after we've reserved the 18%.
Correct. Yes, this is available fund balance.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And I think what you pointed out to me before was, and beyond that, you do have certain amounts, as Lisa mentioned, that are eyeballed for future years with the multi-targets and capital commitments that have been made thus far. Any questions for Lisa, Norma, or others before we move to the resolutions?
Thank you.
Motions?
You're welcome.
And Amanda?
Well, not about this, but thank you. I just want to confirm how many legislators are here. I only see Randy on there. So that means there's 11 legislators.
I thought I saw Travis's name just as we were starting.
I don't think Travis is going to be here this evening.
So then Katrina can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that means we need 6 votes to pass something.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Thanks, Amanda, for clarifying that for us. Any other questions at this point? If not, we'll move on to the list of OTR topics that were submitted. One, go easy on me. And second, and I didn't plan it this way, but one that I had submitted in the process regarding the electric bill, Arella is on for facilities. I don't have real strong feelings about this, but I did put it forward looking at the large increase that we're expecting in electric costs for facilities across the county. I was just simply looking at this optimistically and hoping that we might two-step that increase to the target over a period of time. Number one, in hopes that we don't spend that much in new electric costs. But number two, that we begin to see some of the investments in the facilities projects that are coming forward that may simply reduce that line as we move forward. Ultimately, if we come up short, you're going to contingency to pay the electric and out of the general fund. If you don't spend the funds, it goes back to general fund. But Rich?
Did you need a motion on that or a second? Were you moving?
I would take a motion. If
I would move that, Lee.
Greg seconds, discussion. Dan?
I would just like to hear from our county administrator.
Well, I put these figures in based on Arel's estimate, so I would defer to Arel for any further detail.
So I think that's friendly, what you're proposing. It's unclear exactly, what the electric utilities especially may be next year. There's just a lot of things that are unclear. As I discussed the last time, we are starting our green facilities improvement projects. And so we know that we will be increasing our electric demand. Not sure exactly when that will kick in next year. Also, as Terry Carroll emailed, I think a week ago or so, our contract for electric purchases expires, I think, October of next year. So that will leave us 2 months under a new contract, and Terry is indicating that, that's going to increase. We have a good rate now for electric, but that may not be the case next year. I was just trying to give the legislature and county administration as much information as I have for electric costs. So, if we don't use it all, then it would go back to the general fund. This budgeting unit 1621 is basically held harmless. If the bills come in higher, the county has to pay them. But I would much rather give you, our best estimate of what those costs will be, so at least it can be planned for, rather than just not spending too much of an effort in budgeting, utilities and such. So that's the best that I have. I don't think that Terry Carroll is on the line, but he may be able to add anything. But I think what you're proposing, Lee, is good. 100,000 target, and then one time for 45,000. My hope is that we don't need it all next year.
Thanks, Earl. Thanks for being on with us. Ann, did you have a question?
Well, if Terry Carroll is here, then maybe he could answer that. Because my question was going to be, as we're getting more electric vehicles, as we're switching over to more electric heat pumps, and, as we have a large green initiative going on with the county. So I'm just wondering from Terry, if he is on, if he had any opinions about this.
I don't think he is on. I haven't seen him.
Or if Arel could answer that, but maybe he already did and what he thought.
Gerald, is there anything to add to that, to the question Ann had, especially with charging stations and other additions to the electric usage?
Well, as far as charging stations, we updated or upgraded 4 charging stations at the Human Services Building. They just are faster charging. It's the level 2 chargers versus the level 1s that were there before. I know that the next one is 1 charging station up at the Crash Fire Rescue Building. And then Terry would know this better, but there's a grant for a charging station at the Public Safety Building. And that is one that is just solar powered. So that should have minimal, electric consumption, because it's solar energy will actually power the EV charger for that location. So we don't have any plans beyond that for next year at this point, but that could change. It's taking quite a while to get new electric vehicles. The lead time is almost a year for some of those. So at this point, we've installed we will have installed all the chargers probably before the end of the year. Crash Fire Rescue is the last one that we will have to do this year. We did one at the Human Services Annex for Office for the Aging a couple of months ago. And as I said, we completed maybe 2 weeks ago 4 upgrades at the Human Services Building.
Possibly another, so I could ask a follow-up, or clarity. I was more concerned about any other green initiatives to any facilities where the use of electric could be way more than electric vehicles, but I guess we could look at that. I mean, to me, if Arel is okay with this, I'm okay with this. We can look at that as time goes by, because I know there's a lot of unknowns.
Right. I mean, the last time I indicated that the geothermal, where we're at the Public Works facility, that would be going all electric, but that won't really kick in until most likely 2024. And then we're doing mental health building, going to variable refrigerant flow units. That will also most likely be either late 2023 or early 2024. And so, we may have some additional charges end of next year, but as I said, it's hard to predict that right now. What we're finding is lead times on a lot of the key elements and equipment is much longer than usual. So our hope is that some of these systems will be in place by late next year, but that may not be entirely the case.
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you.
Thanks, Earl. A lot of variables. Greg, did you have a question?
Yeah, mine, somewhat of a question, but if we're going to see more electrification, we should see then our fossil fuel consumption, which I'm assuming is the heat line, which maybe is natural gas or propane, or should also maybe at some point start to decrease. So, my thought here is there's a lot of sort of influx. So why add it to the target? I like Lee's approach to keep some of that as one time, kind of see where we are, see as we phase in the green initiatives, because I think both of those lines are a little unknown and hopefully will change over time. But in this budget, we're seeing money added to target for both the heat line and the electric line. So that's why I think that this is fine to sort of see where things shake out.
Thanks, Greg. Are there any further questions or comments? Are we ready to vote? We'll vote.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes,
11 ayes, 0 noes, motion passes.
thank you. Next up, mental health, Reach Medical, behavioral health outreach nurse discussion. Dan.
Yes, thank you. I would like to move this OTR for $87,860, a 3-year, multi-year, and it would be in the contingent, coming from the contingent fund or placed in the contingent fund.
Moved by Dan Klein, second by Shauna Black. And Dan, would you like to speak to this?
Do we have Tatiana Thomas on the call? She's not here. Okay. Okay, well, Reach Medical is a not-for-profit organization that is providing medical care to a lot of people in our community in kind of non-traditional ways. The homeless population and drug-addicted population. And doing a lot of innovative things, going out on site. One of the things they're doing now, they told us, is that they carry an iPad, a tablet with them. And when they encounter someone that might be in need of some medical care, they don't need to make an appointment to come back to their office some other time. They do telehealth right there, right then. They hold up their tablet and they are able to do telemedicine right on the spot, out in the field, innovations like that. So they are trying to expand their services. They have an ambitious goal of adding a whole bunch of team members, and this would fund just one of them, a registered nurse. I think Frank Krupp is on the line, and Frank has indicated he supports this organization, this idea, but certainly if he would like to say anything more, that I would welcome that.
Frank, would you be willing to say a few words on this proposal?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. Reach Medical has been a strong partner with us, particularly over the last few years, dealing with COVID and the hard to reach population. So they really have established themselves as a provider of service to hard to reach individuals, including many that we serve in other ways, whether it be through DSS or mental health or public health. And so they've been working, as Dan said, to really expand their outreach efforts where they can do things in the field and really reach people where they are, which has really been an improvement in the services being provided to this population. So certainly supportive of this. Last year, they requested services for 2022, which we supported as well, but it was one time. And I have to apologize. I was not clear with them on the budget process. So they kind of didn't know the timing on when to bring something like this forward. So I think that's partially why we're dealing with it now. But certainly I'm supportive of both REACH and their proposal to expand. The only thing that I would point out is that REACH is looking for sustainable funding. So it is, you know, they are looking for funding sources that would be recurring to help them, you know, maintain some of this programming that they're offering.
Thanks, Shauna.
Yeah, so I just want to remind everyone that what we continue to see in the encampments as well as our homeless population is the need for mental health services. And this is a provider that is trusted amongst our homeless population, much of our homeless population. And they have had social workers, psychiatrists on staff, psychiatric nurses on staff that have worked. Much of their population is struggling with substance abuse. And so to expand this program, I think we really could see a direct impact. In their expansion, what they initially offered is a proposal that is well over $1 million whenever Dan and I met with them. And it's including, I believe, 5 different staff members as part of their mental health program that they're starting up. So we're just making a very small dent. I believe the city is also going to be making a contribution to REACH. And, you know, I think this program is going to make a very small dent in where we need to be with mental health. But I feel like, you know, the 87,000 or 100,000 that they're asking for is really going to be an investment. And in the long run, I think it actually could save us money by people not going to the emergency room to receive mental health services.
Thank you, Shauna. I saw a hand from Mike Lane and then one from Mike Sigler.
Me first. I just wondered, can we do this for less than 3 years? Could we do it for 2 years, let's say, or 1 year over target?
Try it for, I mean, I'd be comfortable with 2. I think that would give us a good idea of the metrics and the success of the program.
I would move it for 2 then, an amendment.
That's friendly.
Mike moves friendly, Dan accepts, and Shauna, seconder, accepts. Okay, moving the 87,860 to a 2-year funding for REACH. Further discussion, Dan? I had a hand from Mike.
Mine was more of a question for Frank. So I'm going to vote for this. My question is, looking forward, I mean, I kind of think there's a mental health crisis. I think we all kind of agree to that in this country. Are we going to put our mental health, I mean, we're a county, so we're going to put it underneath our mental health, just like our health department, our mental health department. Or are we looking at this more like Human Services Coalition, where there's going to be somebody who's going to, well, there's a mental health service over here, and there's one over here, and there's one over here. And there's going to be somebody at an organization that's going to kind of pull all that together. Does that make any sense? I mean, how are we going to coordinate our approach to that, or are we not really going to coordinate an approach to it?
So I can jump in. I think, and again, this particular one, I offer my apologies that it didn't go through our traditional processes. But normally when there's a mental health initiative, it goes through our community services board, and they kind of weigh in, and as your advisors, you know, give input on these types of situations. The thing about REACH is that they're not really a mental health provider. While they are, they're a licensed OASIS provider, and they're also a primary care practice. So they kind of fall under the health side of things. So we're kind of trying to figure out where they fit, you know, in the departmental process. But now that we're going to be one department, it will make it easier and smoother. But I think to answer your question, Mike, the Community Services Board, for anyone that the mental health department contracts with, is that kind of review process about whether it aligns with our local services plan, and are these things that, you know, they are prioritizing and supporting for the you know, pending budget year.
Great. I'll talk to Dan about this other question I have. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mike. I saw a hand from Dan and then one from Veronica and Amanda.
I just wanted to add one more level of detail here, is that we're putting in a contingency because as part of the contract process that I'm learning about still, this is new. This is one area of the county that I still don't know anything about. We need to drop some metrics, and by we, I mean Frank, to contract with them so that we can measure effectiveness against that as we look at it again in future years.
Thank you for that clarification, Dan. Veronica.
Thank you, Lee. I'm excited about this, want to support it. I just wanted to toss in that I got to talk with another community outreach worker last week, someone who works, Natalia Kolich from Family and Children's Services, which is not REACH, but they work, like they go out into the encampments with people from REACH as teams. So this is related. And Natalia had only like extremely high praise for the REACH folks in what I think is the same position that we're funding, to have more of that. And it just seems like Shauna described a really, really good program that's, helping folks whose like health challenges we've been talking about a lot. If it says the services have been shown to reduce opioid related overdose deaths, which I think is also a big one of our priorities. And I also wanted to bring back one takeaway I had from that conversation, was that the interpersonal relationships and trust are really important in this kind of work. And so like someone mentioned, REACH has that, which is good. And then this is kind of not answering, but like reflecting back at Mike Sigler's question, it seems like in thinking about like where these services should live administratively, starting with thinking about where are the relationships already between the people we're trying to serve and people connected to resources. REACH is one of those places. Like starting and then building from there seems like a logical way to go about it. Oh, I had a question though. You mentioned REACH was looking for funding from the city. Do you know if they have other like searches for funding in the works for the rest of the $1 million they wanted?
I think the money that they're asking from the city is not this program specifically. They're offering some different programs that they're looking for city funding.
Thank you, Veronica. Shauna, Dan, you've
I
got.
also don't have a specific answer, except this is something that we should ask them over the course of the year as we interact with them more.
Thank you. Amanda, did you have?
Dan answered my question before I even asked it. So thanks.
Thanks, Amanda. Any other questions or comments on this motion? If not, I'll just make one parting comment that with some of the target audience here, we're going to hear a little bit later when Rich's discussion comes up on EMS. And this is one solid program that will help alleviate some problems that the EMS community is facing in that particular community. It is a stress, and mental health services will go a long way toward helping alleviate that. If we're all set, shall we move ahead to a vote?
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
11 ayes, 0 noes, motion passes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item number 3 was removed from the agenda for discussion at another level. But with your consent, I'd like to ask if we could move up the item on weights and measures. Aaron Becker is with us here, and I'd like to respect his time and not have him hold till the end of the meeting. With that, Mike.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. Glad Aaron's here. Aaron, you want to come up to a microphone or up to the front, just so if people have questions? We've had some discussion about this. We had it initially when Aaron presented his budget figures to us. He told us about having been out ill for several weeks. He told us about trying to catch up with things that were behind. We talked a little bit about how this is a perennial question that has come up for years, frankly, as to the staffing level of the Weights and Measures Department. A little later, after our discussion, we also heard from our county administrator, and I don't want to speak for her, but she was wondering whether we should add a person at this point or not. But I think we should. I think it's time. I think we've talked about it a long time. Aaron sent out a well thought out email in which he had talked about a request for a person and equipment. I'm not sure that the figure I've got here is exactly right, but it would be a start. And I think that we should do this year. I think we should have done it 20 years ago, frankly. But there's always time to start, and that's why I've moved this.
Mike makes a motion. Is there a second to this? Second by Veronica Pillar. Ann, I see your hand.
Yeah, I would like to ask our county administrator for her advice on this or her thoughts.
As we discussed previously, I had thought that we could take the coming year to look into the placement of this department, whether to keep it as is. Certainly, I agree that more support is needed. I was going to be looking to see whether administrative support could be gleaned from another office, and also just looking at different concepts for structuring of this work. If it's the prerogative of the legislature to add more staffing prior to that, then so be it. But we had discussions with Aaron about taking our time to move ahead to determine the structure, and whether additional support, be it full-time, part-time. Different counties have it placed either standalone or with other offices. Different counties have it, have their weights and measures covering multiple counties if there's a need in adjoining counties. So that was the intent, was to do a broader look. So that was, I don't deny that the current structure in terms of having one sole person doing the work without backup is not a great idea. And I do agree that is something that needs to be addressed.
Would this, can I ask a follow-up? Would this, adding a new person now, I mean, I'm fully in favor. I know you and your department need a lot more support and backup. But so I'm just wondering, would this, if we pass this resolution and added another person, would this preclude you from doing that or make it harder for you to look at overall the department? Would it be better to look at the structure before we added another person? I just want to make sure we're doing things in the right order, or the best order that we can.
Before Lisa answers that, certainly any creation of a new position means that you're going to have to bring forward a resolution, whether it's in the wrap-up one at the end of the year or when you come back with a plan. Is that correct? So this would put it into the target according to Mike's motion?
Yes.
That at least would fund the level?
If I could also say that, maybe we don't hire somebody till the middle of the year. I don't know. It could be planned out, but I think we ought to have the money in there so that there's the flexibility.
Does that answer, Ann?
Well, I had my question for Lisa, so just.
Sure, that's that. If the funding is in there, that would allow us to look at the options and implement in 2023.
That wouldn't preclude you doing the other things is looking. Okay, I want to make sure, I respect your position and want to make sure we don't do something that's, going to hurt something in the future. Okay, thank you.
I see Rich and then Shauna.
Mike, thanks for bringing this up. I agree we should be doing something to make this department more resilient and supported. I'm wondering if it would make sense to put it into contingency so that there is the flexibility to act either way by the county administrator, either through administrative restructuring or through hiring a headcount.
I wouldn't have an objection to that, but can we do that and have it target? Norma says yes. That would be all right with me.
Both contingency and target? Okay.
So that's friendly. Do we consider that a change to Mike's motion?
I don't know.
I don't know if
I'm
that's a
just
change.
trying to answer Rich's question.
Yeah, I would offer that.
Is there a second to that?
Well, you want to ask if it's friendly?
I
'Cause
was
she's-
just gonna say it would be friendly to me. I can't tell quite what we're doing.
As long as other folks don't want to just go ahead and do it, if this is, it would be friendly to me as well. I just want something to happen tonight. If there's other ways of tackling this, please let us know. If Shauna's got a question.
Yeah, I guess I was wondering if we could actually fund it for half a year and then continue to put it in target and contingency. Because the reality is, it will take Lisa a while to research what's needed. And then by the time we actually get someone hired, it's probably not going to be till June anyway.
But if
If I may.
Go ahead, yeah.
I would actually agree with that. I would want to take a more educated and informed approach to this. This isn't exactly a small decision. And I would appreciate more time to make some considerations to get things a little better structured for the new position.
All right. But I know there's in part of the swirl here is that the possibility of needing a vehicle.
Yes, sir.
For another person.
Yep.
So I just want to make sure there's enough money in there that we can figure that out.
Norma?
There wasn't enough money in there to pay for a vehicle.
Okay, this,
$100,000 would not cover a vehicle.
that's why I wasn't exactly sure what it would be, except that
If that
put
was the
that
intent,
forward.
there's not enough.
Yeah, when I originally just ballparked the figure, it was actually done honestly quite hastily, just a quick roundabout ballpark figure to get the salary and the fringes as well as a little bit of extra money for other equipment. But the added expense of a vehicle would be more, and I did not factor that into the 100,000 that I presented to Lisa and Norma.
Okay.
Did I see Randy? Did you have a question?
I did. It's for Aaron. I was just curious what services are not being completed now and what additional services or inspections you could do.
Above and beyond what I'm doing, all the commercial scales in the county and all the grocery stores, they're used in many different ways, vehicle scales, retail motor fuel dispensers, gas stations. There's a lot of package checking that can be done, ensuring that tare weights are being taken out and so that expense is not being extended to the customer. Short term, that isn't very much. It's mere pennies to each consumer, but in the long term, those pennies add up to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, if it's not caught and checked and brought to the attention of store operators. I think that's very important for consumer protection. There's fuel quality assurance. You want to make sure that you're getting the octane grade that you're actually paying for, and certainly for the cost of fuel nowadays, you want to be sure you're actually getting what you're purchasing. Fuel quality assurance testing is something that the state offers reimbursement, and that's a program that I am keenly looking into. That's one aspect of it. Another part of it is that when I go out there in the field and I enforce some laws and I issue orders to some of these businesses, part of being able to enforce the law is being able to go back to check up on the status of the orders I've issued to these businesses for business practices that aren't in alignment with agriculture market law. And I want to be able to get out there and check up on this stuff, because if I don't, how am I actually enforcing what I've brought to the attention of these business operators? And so I think it would be a benefit to the local consumers to add a full-time position. I believe I do have to put more thought in it. There are things I do intend on expanding in my department. And that's a discussion that would be better had at a later date. I would like the opportunity to compile more information to give you a better answer, because I don't think I've answered your question to the fullest extent I believe your question deserves.
No, it did. It did. Thanks, Letter. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Thanks, Aaron. I saw a follow-up from Shauna and Greg, Ann, and Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was wondering, should someone make the amendment to change the requested amount to 50,000? Is that okay?
Well,
Based on, go ahead, Ann.
I was going to actually suggest it's a couple down to keep it at 100,000 to include the new vehicle and have the person start in June, because we might have to give them a new vehicle.
The thing is, for a vehicle, that's not going to be in target. And so you're going to actually separate the
Oh,
funding.
separate that.
You're going to have the vehicle come out of fund balance.
Okay,
And then if you hire someone, you're going to have that go out of target.
sorry.
Right? Is that?
I
Your
think
thought?
that's probably the case.
Okay, Mike.
So I would, based on the discussion, based on what we've heard Lisa say, what we've heard Aaron say, and the other folks that talked tonight, let me amend my own amendment to say the figure would be 50,000 in target, that money would go into contingency with the understanding that there's going to be a review of this department and possibly the hiring of someone halfway through the year.
Is that clear? Is that friendly to the seconder?
Yes.
Thanks, Veronica. Greg?
Yeah, I don't want to be unfriendly for a minute. I have a question though. I fully support whatever iteration. My only question is adding it to target and contingency. It seems like there are question marks and there are variables, and adding that into target is maybe what I have the objection with. If we can put it in contingency as one-time funding, and then whatever the solution will hopefully be baked by the 24 budget season. So then it could go into it at that time. I know it has to be done. We don't know what it's going to be. I mean, we heard from the director of the department, we've heard from the county administrator that there's more to be discussed and more to be determined and more structure to be had. I just hesitate to put money into to target if there's still that many question marks after the discussion. I'd much rather see it as one time, and then it be in the budget as a full iteration for next year.
Mike?
Greg, I hear you, but I really think it needs to be target. We don't know what's going to happen next year.
Is there a motion to amend or any further discussion on the topic? Nah, Ann?
So I'm not sure where we're at. So right now it's in target. And if you want to propose, so we don't have an amendment on this yet because the amendments so far have been friendly. Do you want to make an amendment that it go? No?
I'm happy with Mike made the amendment.
I revised my amendment.
So that it's
and Veronica accepted that.
So that it's in contingency now.
It would be in contingency at target at $50,000.
Oh, contingency and target. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Further discussion? Or Veronica, yes.
Yeah, if we didn't, I may not be understanding this, if we didn't put this in target, so it had to be like reapproved next year, if the solution to the one person is not enough to do the whole department's work, problem involved hiring someone, wouldn't that make it like not really possible? If the money's only allocated for half a year? Or is that not true? Or not possible, but like more difficult?
You would have to add to the budget next year in the proposal, but the 50,000 would be moved to the target at this point and carried forward. So you would have that start there. And then if there were needs to further expand, we would see that either mid-year or in next year's budget deliberations. Am I correct? I'm seeing yeses. Greg?
That $50,000 target doesn't even give you enough for the salary and the fringe for 2024 budget season, even if it's in target. So you have to come back anyways to talk about this in 2024 or a mid-year adjustment or something. So that's why it seems like to just dump it into target, to just keep the target going higher when we don't really know what it's going to be. And we're going to have the discussion again in 24.
Norma, did you have a clarification?
I just wanted to, so whenever, if at least by acknowledging at least half of this right now, it prevents us from, I use the term kicking the can down the road, because eventually we have to pay for it. So when Lisa was explaining the deferred tax levy, we just add more to the deferred tax levy. So if we have it in contingent, nothing happens to that money until you all make a decision to move it.
Thanks, Norma. Dan and Shauna, you're good? Shauna, did you have something to
I'm
add?
set. Thank you.
Are we ready to vote on the motion as amended and accepted? $50,000 target into contingency, plan to come back. Did I get that? All in favor? Or well, I guess we don't do that anymore.
No. Shauna Black,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Dan Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
Yes.
I have 11 ayes, 0 noes. Motion passes.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Aaron, thank you for coming down tonight with us. We appreciate the work you're doing. And
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
see what we can do to provide some help. Moving along, Randy Brown, topic youth services.
Yes, I put this OTR forward to do something proactive related to our youth. And I'm proposing that we pay $4,000 to this OTR.
Motion to place $40,000 in one-time funding for expanded youth services. Is there a second to this? Second by Dan Klein. Discussion, questions? Dan?
Well, let me talk a little bit. I see Kate's here as well, so and she can jump in if she likes. But the reason I did this is because I've been sensitive to this issue for some time. I think mental health for our youth is an issue. I've met with school personnel, youth service people, both in Newfield and Lansing. And they're quite concerned and they need help, help to provide services to youth. And my issue is related to the youth that are not connecting with anything or anyone. I don't know the solution to that. I met with Kate and Teresa and we talked about this numerous times and exchanged a lot of emails and notes. And the thought is to put a plan together. That's what this is for, is to hire a part-time person that would do outreach and would outreach throughout the county, not just in one town or school district, and to act as a coordinator or a someone who would identify programming that is underutilized and determine why it's underutilized and find out what other programming is out there that doesn't need to be created, but it already exists that we could bring in And it would be somebody to work closely with schools, libraries, other youth organizations in the county. And it would take a lot of research to do that. One of the things that I've heard is that the county does provide a lot of services throughout the county. And Frank Krupa shared with me that in Newfield, for example, there, I think at least 3 days a week, a mental health professional is going to Newfield. I wasn't aware of that. So it's that type, which is great. I'm happy that's happening, but it may be happening in other school districts. I don't know. So part of it is to understand what the county is really doing already, and to build on that, or at least explain and let people know what is happening. But the main goal is to reach those people that are not connecting. And quite often it is the underserved and the poorer populations that are not involved or interacting. And what we've learned is that when kids don't interact and have other things that they're involved in, whether it's sports or arts or whatever it is, they find school not very interesting, and you have issues with that. And it would also be something focused on homeschooling as well. It wouldn't be just people that are going to a school. So the reason I'm only asked for one time, because if we can't figure this out in 1 year, then we're, I don't want to waste the county's money. But my goal would be to, in year 2, to provide a different plan, OTR, with specifics. So, and Kate, your work, welcome to jump in.
Thanks, Randy. Kate Shanks Booth is on with us. And Kate, would you like to add to this?
Yeah, sure. Just a little bit. Thanks, Randy. I really appreciated the opportunity to talk about this. In youth services, we do a really good job at staying in tune with our service providers to understand what's happening in the community as far as things that we fund. But I think what we have seen is that COVID-19, really has pushed, we're talking about the mental health crisis. And I think that, oftentimes we think about therapists and we think about, the mental services around them. Those are really important. But one of the things that we focus on here and the dollars that we invest local and in state is really in some of those preventative services that put people in the lives of youth in the positive youth development frame structure to help them not get to the point where they are so anxious or they're so far gone in the process that you're having to do those mental services. And so really what came out of conversations with Randy is that we have seen there's a huge shift in the number of kids that are needing mental health services, education disparities, family issues, economic stresses, and it's really shaping the landscape. And I think coming out of COVID, I don't think that we really have seen the impacts of COVID. I think we're going to continue to see those over the years as we go forward. But this would really allow us to sort of get our brain around the landscape, and would allow us to have a person who would focus on the agency level. What are the challenges? What are their needs? The municipal level, what is being provided, and then build off of the county services, know what we provide, also be able to talk to Frank and paint a picture of really what's happening, and then how to best respond to the needs of the youth that are accessing services and have a history with that. And then those who, due to all of the things that COVID has sort of brought into their lives, have been pushed over the edge for that. And Randy's really right. Schools are struggling with this. Summer camps struggled with this. There's a lot of things that are changing. And so the hope here is that we'll be able to get a grasp around this, be able to go out and actually have some surveys, talk one-on-one, and get some data that will help us put together a better plan. And then next year, be able to talk to you about ways we think we can help best support our community partners and make sure that it's funding is available to do that for future conversations, for background, to make sure that those are data-driven decisions.
Thank you, Kate.
Yeah.
Questions? Amanda.
You called on me even before I put my hand up. I think you both described, the issues very well. It's clearly, our youth face a lot of challenges. I guess I don't fully understand what this person will do. like on a day-to-day basis, what will they do 25 hours a week? And I guess I also, like, as we've talked about with other positions, are you really going to be able to hire somebody for 1 year, 25 hours a week, not really being able to promise them a job going forward? I don't know. I guess it doesn't feel very concrete to me. It feels like very broad, like we hope this will help the problem kind of thing.
I think so. It's around a project assistant. So really with capacity of our agency or our department and turnover, this is something that to devote 25 hours a week to, I think is something that would be possible to do. They're going to be going out, they're going to be doing community surveys, they're going to be talking to people. It's after night, it may be in the evening, maybe during the day, being able to really focus on different ways of collecting information from our community partners. At all around the county, not just, Ithaca centered. And I think it would give us the ability to actually focus on this right now, just expand our capacity to be able to do the things that Randy has suggested that we do to help the local school districts and our agencies that are trying to help youth with, and just expanding the idea that mental health, understanding what the challenges are, better understanding what's happening, will allow us to be more responsive as we move forward.
Okay, so just clarifying, primarily to expand on what you're already doing.
Yes, to expand on what we're already doing, but to also get a lay of the land, because what we have seen is there are nonprofits who are stepping into other services that maybe they didn't provide before. Maybe there's staffing challenges and they're not able to provide a service. A school district, for example, Newfield may be having a challenge where Lansing is not. And so just to be able to get an understanding of what is happening in what areas we emerge out of COVID and move into a world where we're living with it and the impacts that that's having and how to respond. It really has shaped things, and we're seeing unsteadiness all over the county in what is needed. And we know that the approaches that we have used historically, they need to be tweaked in order to address the issues, especially with the increase in needs of service and what type of services that we're providing.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that. The reason that I brought this forward is because when you look at the educational process, and we've basically given our kids to the school districts for half the year, and we let them deal with it, and that hasn't worked. So this is a vision of working with them, the teachers, the community, the families, and communicating with them, and going right to the communities, having forums, in-person forums, and this person would be doing part of that, and asking them, how can we help? What do you need? What are your problems? What services or programs would be available? Is transportation your big issue? Which it is. We're hearing transportation is a huge issue. For example, speaking to Travis, for GIAC, 10, 15 years ago, 60% of the kids walked. Now it's 10% of the kids can walk there. So he's losing programming because of people coming because they can't get there. So I think we want to understand what the barriers are, and this is what this person is going to have to do. And I'll be going to the forums. I'm sure Kate will probably be going. Anybody else that will be going, and want to find out what the real barriers are. And also, the school knows all too well the kids and families who are struggling, and that is not communicated to the county well. And so what the county's services they're providing to these families and kids is not communicated well to the schools. So it's basically two different silos working on this, and it needs to work in partnership. So that I'm focused on.
Thanks, Randy, for clarifying that. I saw Ann, then Shauna, and Rich.
So a couple questions. So with the 5,000 for transportation, what for youth transportation, what's that for?
So we know that's an issue right now. So it'd be transportation for youth. In school districts, I think that 5,000 is really more at 25,000 because they get reimbursed at about 80% rates, and they're willing to go with their buses and to pick kids up and take in the programming. And so our hope is to have some actual programming done this year, I mean, 2023, whether it's field trips or whatever it may be. But the schools are willing to transport kids, and the cost to them would be about 20%, because the state reimburses the rest.
So this person is going to kind of do a survey, on the ground survey in the community and start implementing things right away as they see, or I guess coming back to the youth services, coming back to the youth services department and then implementing some things. So is that what you're saying?
I see Kate leaning forward. Do you have an answer to that question?
Yeah, so just to be clear, the project assistant would not transport youth. That's not any part of what would be happening here. I think realistically, if we want to have focus groups, we may be having youth who would be in a program, right, or may need to be bussed back and forth. And I think the school districts are willing and may be able to do that. We still need to do some clarification around what hours they're able to be reimbursed and whatnot. But I think what Randy is saying is that the schools get reimbursed for a certain percentage of their travel expenditures. And so if we could say like we needed a bus to move some youth here to there, or we were going to provide transportation in a certain way, if we would be able to say we would cover that 20%, they would then be able to claim that rest from the state. So I think he's saying, and the idea for him in this was that he was trying to leverage local funds and cover up some of the differences and disparities that some of the school districts wouldn't be able to be reimbursed for. And I think I think in part also knowing that we have a lot of things already going on. So as we begin to make these connections, if we had a situation where there was a program and a group of youth that wanted to have access to that program, we might be able to offset some of those travel and transportation costs in this current year. So not necessarily that we'd be creating something new, but we may be reducing a barrier to access in the current year. And we may create something new in the year, but I really feel like that would be a little bit later down the pike as soon as we figured out what some of these challenges were, what some of these barriers were. But I think with Randy's thinking, we know transportation is an issue, particularly with rural communities. We did work with TCAT to have the free ride program started, but having a 9-year-old get on a bus by themselves, a lot of parents aren't comfortable with that. And TCAT is not increasing, they're having driver shortages. We're not increasing the number of rides to the rural areas. So those are just all some things I think Randy was thinking about, ways to reduce access to some of these questions and surveys and one-on-one opportunities we might have, community cafes in the community. And then also if there were kids who could benefit from reducing transportation as a barrier now, that would be something we could do. But this person is not transporting people. Some of that may go to, some of the 35,000 goes to pay the salary, gets them set up with some supplies. We'll pay for some of their transportation because they're going to be driving all over the county, meeting with different folks. And they would be working in tandem with the rest of our staff. So I would be going out as well. Teresa would be going out as well. And so would Rick Alvord. But this would really just be someone who would be able to focus on this and give it their full attention. Because I do think, and again, just want to say that I think COVID has really shaped the landscape of youth development. And we really need to get a grasp on what that looks like, because if we can provide preventative services now, we're going to spend less money in the future. As those youth grow and the demand for the type of services that they need increase dramatically.
Thank you. That helps me to understand it more. And just thinking about, like, say, in my district with the town of Ulysses and Trumansburg, they're doing certain things, and that's probably a lot different than other areas. So just to collect even that information or help them, because each one then has to figure out, how do I advertise that? How do I make it available for kids to sign up? And if there's some sharing or shared services or something we can do to help with that. And I'm sure you'll find out a lot of other things to help. So, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Thanks, Kate. Shauna and Rich, did you have follow-up?
Yeah, so I have 3 kids, and I know whenever they stay busy, they stay out of trouble. So that's always a good thing. However, I have a few concerns about the position. And I think sometimes we underestimate the work that our own mental health department is doing in our schools. So they're not just working in Newfield. We have social workers, therapists that are being set up in Enfield. Last I knew, they were also in Dryden and in Trumansburg, as well as the Ithaca City School District. And so, I don't want to recreate something that we're already doing. I think a lot of these services and a lot of the issues that we've seen around COVID are based around the lack of mental health services that poor people are able to access. And I think the way that the county can respond and the way that we are responding is by sending therapists into the schools and making it easy for people to have that type of service. I guess my one question is there a reason why, Kate, whenever you met with Lisa, that this was not mentioned during your discussion with Lisa?
Sure. No, and that's a fair question. We were asked to be good stewards and frugal with the budgets that we brought. And as we looked at our OTRs, the ones that we brought forward, the municipal youth service system is doing a lot of good work, but that needs an injection of those funds that were taken in 2021. And the same thing with the agencies. They need the funds to be able to sustain what we're doing now. While it's not plugging the hole, it only gets worse if we don't sustain the structures that we have that are in place. And so if we looked at our two top priorities, discussions with the board, that is what really took precedence for us in priorities. And so not to say that planning ahead is not to say that that's not a priority, but it was something that was not necessarily at our top tiers of 1 and 2 that we brought forward. The other piece of it is too, as we move away from COVID, we're having conversations with rec directors and summer directors. Our process starts really, really early. And so some of the impacts that COVID's having really aren't coming out until I'm having some of these conversations with these service providers after the fact. And so, I know we had some behavior issues that started in the school year. Well, that spilled over to summer camps. And we expected that it would be, but to be able to quantify that or to give you any data and talk to you beyond anecdotal, it just wasn't possible until now. And so when Legislator Brown brought this opportunity forward, it was something for us to say, this is important. He's supporting it and understanding that wrapping our brains around what's happening will allow us to be more responsive and convene the people that we need to convene, and also not work in opposition. Frank is doing a lot of things and his department is doing a lot of things, and obviously we would work in tandem with them. But I think one of the things that has come up in conversation is the need to have a place where if a family has a question, whether that's they want to know, what programming is available to get a mentor for them, or what mental services are available. We've also been talking to 211, and you might assume that there's a list of those things readily available that you can just go in and type in youth services, and a list of whatever you would be interested in is there. It's not so easy, and it's actually counterintuitive, and the way you search for those things is really complicated. So one of the projects that we were working on and talking about before we met with Legislator Brown was to make sure that we were creating a space where people could go in, and maybe it's a website that they would fashion for youth services. So it'd be easier for parents to find resources that they needed. And it would list mental health services. It would list those things as well. So it's kind of, I think it's a lot bigger than just, it's making sure that we understand what the barriers are, what resources are available, and how do we connect people now, and then moving forward, what can we do within our confined and the areas we focus on to offset some of the things that I think we're going to be seeing more and more of as we move forward.
And then I do have one follow-up. Lisa, if this were brought to you during your meeting, would you have recommended this?
Not to put you on the spot.
It's gosh, it does put me on the spot a bit. It is a one-time request. I probably would have asked some of the same questions you're asking. And I guess one of the questions that I would have is will you be able to make sufficient progress in 1 year with one-time funds for this? At the end of the year, will you have achieved what you're setting out to achieve? So I guess I would just be asking the same questions you are.
So I think after hearing this, I think what would be really important is that there's some reporting back. And I think there has to be some metrics for this position.
Absolutely.
Youth services reports to HHS. And, I think on a quarterly basis, I think this is really going to be important to hear back from this person. So I'll vote for it.
Thanks, Shauna. Rich, did you have a question?
Yeah, and I'll be as brief as I can because I think most of what I was going to say has been said. I agree with you, Kate, that the impacts of the pandemic are go in all sorts of different directions. And I don't know that I know that we don't fully understand where we're going to see the impacts in years to come, but almost certainly in kids who are totally disconnected from their school environment and all of their social life was completely changed. I am sure we're going to see this for years to come. So Randy, thank you for bringing this. I agree totally with Shauna that let's take a flyer on this. Let's see if this has an impact, but if we could get some reports during the year, that would be really helpful. I will vote in support. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Greg, and then Mike Sigler.
Yeah, this is a challenging one because I think the work needs to be done. But I think to Shauna's point, but a little bit further than Shauna's point, I'd like to see the metrics or the definition of success or a little bit more of a roadmap before voting on this. I also know we have one coming up here for another teen coordinator position at Southside. So it seems like there's a need, and I'm happy to support the need, and I think the county should. But before voting on something like this, I would like to see what those metrics, what that report back would look like. Have it be a little bit more baked, and if it's more money, I'm there. If there's really a defined and clearly spelled out roadmap for impact. So I struggle with this one. And I know we have another teen coordinator position. So I think it's something we need to be looking at. I don't know if it's this one, if it's the other one that's on the agenda, if it's a combination of the two. I guess I would rather vote for this outside of this process because it is one-time funding. Once we have a little bit more time to put together a slightly more concrete action plan. And that's sort of where I am at this moment.
Was that a motion or just a comment at this point while we continue to discuss it? Thanks, Greg. Mike Sigler.
Well, frankly, Greg kind of covered a lot of what I was going to say, and he said it better than I would have said it. So I think my question is a little bit larger, I guess. I mean, what I heard from this is mostly pandemic based. It's like, oh, the pandemic has done this and we want to react to that. And so I guess I'm left wondering what all that pandemic money was for. I mean, I kind of thought this is what that was for. And so shouldn't this be getting applied for through our other avenue? I mean, if this is a response to the pandemic and we've set aside money for the pandemic for agencies and things like that, and even, granted, this is part of us. Southside isn't though, and that one's coming up. Shouldn't they be applying to that fund? I mean, isn't that what that fund is for?
I see a hand from Lisa. Let me see if she's got an answer for you.
I can respond to that because in general, the departments have the mechanism of applying for the one-time funds and the allocation of the ARPA funds through the budget process. So they have not been applying for funds through the community recovery fund process.
So Lisa, would you attribute this to the ARPA funds if it were to pass?
It depends on where we are in terms of our expenditure of ARPA funds, but for many of these one-time needs, we have been applying ARPA funding toward it.
Mike, follow up.
My follow-up, since we're doing that, we must be tracking that.
Yes.
And it'd be great to know maybe at the end or somewhere along the lines, kind of where we are with it.
So when we submitted the recommended budget, the remaining unspent ARPA funds that were not attributed toward the community recovery fund or toward the capital program were going to be committed through the 2023 budget. So we should be all all squared away.
Do we know how much is left in that?
Zero.
It'll be, well, I don't understand.
They will all be committed.
By the end of 2023.
Yes, through the 2023 budget process.
This wasn't in the 23.
That's correct.
So we're out now, basically.
Right.
Okay.
We've been using fund balance and ARPA funds to fund one-time projects. Any of those projects that would fall under the guidelines for ARPA, we would put toward ARPA. Anything that wouldn't fall in, we would put toward fund balance. So.
Okay, now I'm confused again because
Sorry.
you're saying it's out, but we're saying we're going to do that. So if it's something in the future, how can we do it if we're already out of it?
I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to imply future tense. That is the methodology that we've applied for the 2023 budget, and we've fully expended the ARPA funds.
Gotcha. All right.
Thanks, Mike. Amanda.
Thanks. I appreciate the conversation. Maybe a little off track, but not really. To Greg's point, I wonder if we could hear a little bit more about the teen coordinator position. I know that's specific to Southside. I know, and obviously serving a different population, but it does seem like they might overlap. And I guess I don't want to mix the lines, but why are we having it? What is the other
I
position?
think it's total, doesn't overlap at all. I mean, we could go into it, but that's,
There's no overlap, other than they work with kids.
overlap with the position that they're proposing right now. I don't see any overlap.
I don't either. I think, it's a different population, the South Side community, and also the teen coordinator position would be someone who's like doing programming with teens. Whereas if I'm understanding Kate right, this position is more of the figure out the context and available resources and do the networking. And they're not, they might end up doing some programming, but not so much that as like information gathering and relationship building. Is that right?
Yeah, we do not, our department does not provide direct services. So we would be working with those people that already do provide direct services and matching them with the populations that would need it, if that would be applicable in this year. Yes.
Such as Southside.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I know I did appreciate your explanation, Kate, of using a project assistant to move this forward the next year, and there was heavy use of project assistants in various departments over the years and some of the major projects and initiatives that we had. So I can see how that may evolve into a future program. Any further questions? If not, motion on the floor and seconded, discussed. Are we ready to vote?
Shawna Black,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
No.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Aaron Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
No.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
No.
Lee Shirtliff.
Yes.
7 ayes, 3 noes, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm
Rich,
sorry, that was 8 ayes.
8 ayes, and the motion passes. We'll move on. Rich John, Department of Emergency Response, discussion on EMS.
Thank you. Thank you, Lee. This is an OTR to add an EMS coordinator position to the Department of Emergency Response. The impetus for this budget amendment came from a meeting of the Public Safety Committee where we had visitors from several of the ambulance services around our county. And frankly, we had just a great discussion about the interrelationship between the Bangs ambulance, the Lansing ambulance, Trumansburg and Groton, and the service they're able to provide in cooperation with each other to residents of the county. As you all know, this is an area where historically the county has not been involved. So the vote on this OTR, I feel, is one of the most important ones we'll be making because it represents a pretty significant policy shift for the county if we vote yes. As I'm sure you're all aware, upstate New York and probably across the country, we're seeing a real crisis in ambulance services. We are far more fortunate here in Tompkins County, but we are not immune. Most of the county is served within fairly reasonable response times. But one of the items we covered in our Public Safety Committee meeting was that there are areas of the county that the response times are longer and too long, frankly, with one of the key determinants of survival of a medical emergency is that time to response. And I'm sitting here, by the way, as a city legislator. We're all connected. This is one county, and the impact on ambulance service, while it's felt in response times more severely in one area or another, has impacts everywhere. And we've seen in the news recently some impacts regarding the ability of law enforcement to respond in a timely manner on staging. And I don't want to get into that discussion, but just bring it up to say this is highly complex. Adding an EMS coordinator would be a first initial step in the county taking responsibility for some element of this ambulance service response. It is very important that we do not act and towns and villages just step back. That in doing this, we have to be very measured and collaborative so that we get more resilient and more ambulance service, emergency medical service to people in emergencies as soon as possible without losing it somewhere else. We don't want to just have a transfer of emergency medical services to county responsibility and away from the existing services. I believe there's a way to do that. And hiring the EMS coordinator position, I think, is a reasonable way to make sure we have the analysis and we have, frankly, what's going to be I believe, a long series of discussions with our towns and villages and the existing ambulance services to make sure we're doing this the right way. So that's why I'm putting it before you, and I will support. So I move it. Thank you.
Motion made by
And I believe Michael Stitley is with us. Yes. Michael, if I.
Let me see if I've got a second to your motion, Greg Mezzi, and go ahead.
It would be great to have Michael correct all my mistakes. Everything I said that was wrong, Michael.
Not a single one. Is it okay to start, Lee? I just wasn't sure if it was a second.
Please, Michael.
Okay, very well. Thank you. So I'd like to begin by thanking Rich and the rest of the Public Safety Committee for introducing this evening. It is much appreciated. In the beginning of the year, I was asked to sit as a city member of the TCOG EMS subcommittee. And during my very first meeting, they presented a study that Cornell University did specific to EMS response times. And they compared that to a study that was done in 2016. And what was evident was that although we have fantastic quality community-based service, there is for an augmentation to those services by providing rapid medical response in some of the most critical EMS calls that exist, typically cardiac or respiratory emergencies. So I was asked by the TCOG EMS subcommittee leadership to present some ideas on what I thought could help close that gap. And what I presented to them was the idea of a rapid medical response unit, which is a non-transport EMS response resource that could then be dispatched to those more critical calls, begin life-saving measures, and await the transport unit's arrival. So that's what was presented at the last Public Safety Committee meeting. However, as Rich said, it's very complex. And what we realized was, although that is a goal, it's ambitious, we really need somebody that can really design it, put it together, and really formulate and to the point where we can operationalize it in the hopes of doing that sometime in 2024. So this person's primary responsibility this year would be to help to develop that service, put together the roadmap, if you will, and provide updates to the legislature throughout the year so that we have a clearer vision for what we can do in 2024. I will say that I recently discussed this at the fire chiefs meeting, and I was pleasantly surprised the support that we received in moving this forward. And I'm excited. I think this is a much needed service for the community. And I think it's a really great way of supporting the community-based services and really to help support, in particular, the volunteer agencies that are still doing a good job, but sometimes struggle, especially during the day, to respond to some of these calls. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I see Ann and then Shauna and then Mike Sigler.
Thank you. I just wanted to note an email the legislators received this morning regarding support for this resolution from the Enfield Town Board. And I want to thank Bob Lynch from the Enfield Town Board for being here tonight and making sure people had copies if they needed it in writing. And so just wanted to make sure that folks know, especially in rural areas, this is a big concern that we want to make sure that, because the response time is often longer. And as was said before, seconds and of course, minutes can mean the difference between life and death. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Shauna and then Mike Lane. Did I see Mike Sigler's hand earlier also? Okay. And Dan Klein.
So I just wanted to thank Rich for bringing this forward. I think you're right about this being one of the most important things that we're going to vote on for this budget. And I also think you're right about the fact that it doesn't matter if it's your district or Mike Lane's or any one of yous around here, they're all of our constituents. And this is definitely the difference between life and death minutes. And so I'm glad to see that we're taking this seriously and the county stepping in. Over the past few weeks, I've met with the Bangs family, met with Rodenhart out in Trumansburg. And this position specifically is something that has received so much positive feedback. And I think they're looking forward to someone being the liaison of sorts between the Sheriff's Department, IPD, and our EMS services. So I feel like this is a small step in the right direction. There's still a lot of coordination that I'm sure will keep this employee very busy over the next year to come. But I'm glad that the position was thought of. Thank you, Michael Steitley, also for meeting with me and going over the position. And, I think Michael brings a lot to the table with his expertise in dealing with different municipalities. And I think that's going to be helpful for us in the long run. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Lane.
Don't want to be repetitive, but I think it's time again. I can still remember back in 2016, the study, and I can remember the shock that went through Dryden when, and Caroline, when the Slaterville ambulance was not able to function anymore and had to discontinue. We needed to do more for the ambulance because the problems that they're facing are only going to get worse as there's a shortage of the paramedics and EMTs, and we can't rely on just volunteer drivers forever. At some point, we have to think where not only a step like this, but what's the next step? So I support this.
Thanks, Mike. Mike Sigler.
No, I don't want to be repetitive either, but I do want to thank everybody that's kind of made this happen. I mean, this kind of started with a lot of different people, but it was certainly something that you didn't see as much kind of outpouring from every town really as much as you have kind of for this. I do. Robert Lynch is sitting over there. Obviously, your letter was great, and I already knew kind of where you were on it, so that was great. And Rodenhart obviously is kind of spearheading a lot of this, and I like the fact that this can lead to the other. That it really is kind of a plan forward. It's not like we're going to put this person in and then they're going to coordinate. It's more than that. They're going to coordinate and they're going to see if we can do this next step. And And I think we do need that next step. And I think that next step's going to be expensive, but I think this person will help us prepare for that. So I do. Michael, I think you've done a wonderful job here. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Dan Klein.
Yeah, about 5 or 6 years ago, there was a EMS task force that met for about a year and a half. Met with Lee, with Lisa, you were on it, I think, as well. Yep. And it was like a fascinating, really good experience, learned a lot, and really frustrating too, because we just came on so many dead ends. Like no one knows what to do. This is a problem all over the country. There were a couple of things in there that I felt that came up and that I always thought was, I wish we could put a little energy behind. I don't see it in this description. So I just want to plant the seed. I'm not going to be developing this job description. I just want to plant the ideas that maybe they can get incorporated in some way. I see administration, planning, supervising, policy, accreditation. Those are all good things. Those are all necessary. What I don't see in there is education. And one of the ideas that came up and that I've always thought was worth investing in is that, you know, what's happened is people don't volunteer for these things anymore. It's just not part of the culture so much anymore. And what I thought might prove fruitful is to go into the high schools, the area high schools, and have programs to try to recruit some high school kids. Some of them will move away and we'll lose them, but some of them won't. I think the only chance we have of having any kind of long-term volunteer group of people doing this is to grow our own and start young. That's the only thing I can think of that might work. So I just wanted to plant that seed. And then one more, which is that there are things that are proposed at the state level, and there are these obstacles that are built into state law that stop us from doing some of the things that might help. So I would also be interested in seeing some part of this job to keep track of those kinds of things and to make recommendations, either, you know, in the simple form of like we pass a little resolution asking the state to do such and such, or maybe even a little more creative than that to help us, you know, I guess that it would be to make recommendations to the state of how they could eliminate some roadblocks that would help us and all the other counties in the state grow this kind of program. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Question for Michael. Sure. Do you see this step moving forward as morphing? What do you see it morphing into as we go? I mean, the individual obviously would get a handle on this particular situations and start to look toward the medical response unit. How do you see it evolving over 2-3 years? The position itself that would be funded here.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think we'll spend the better part of the beginning of 2023 creating that roadmap and looking at exactly what we need to do. I think that eventually this position could be a fully operational position of a person that could be one of our responders. I don't know necessarily now, and I might think differently, a year from now, but I think, this could be a person that could be part of that response agency and actually be more boots on the ground ultimately. So I think that there's certainly room for that. But what I see is in 2024 or well before that, frankly, I'm hoping by at least June having a solid plan to present to the legislature so that we have time to really be smart about how we roll it out in 2024. But what I see it as is a rapid response unit, a paramedic level provider in a vehicle that would be immediately dispatched to those more critical calls in advance of a transport unit. So that's what I initially see it as.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. And I just want to note that I did jot all those suggestions down. So regarding education, high school, and working as an advocate to help affect change at the state level.
Thank you.
And I know, Michael, when we were talking the other day, you mentioned that BOCES appears to be one of the angles that we hadn't used before that you think has a strong possibility.
I'm really excited about that. In fact, last week, myself and one of our dispatch supervisors gave a presentation at BOCES. There's a lot of energy there. I was really excited about it. I think there's a great opportunity there. I was involved with rolling out a high school EMT program that served as a feeder for community-based services back in New Jersey. And I ran that by the new criminal justice coordinator for that program, and he liked that. And, he's already kind of ahead of that. Frankly, he's working at developing an EMT program in BOCES. But when I was speaking with the students, I made a point of, and some of them didn't know, like, listen, many of you have volunteer services in your community. And many did not know. So we were able to provide that information back to the school, points of contact, so they could, go back into their local community and seek that out. And I use myself as an example. Somebody that joined my local rescue squad in New Jersey at the age of 15 and became an EMT at 16. That led to, a career in law enforcement, and then, eventually sitting in this seat here in Tompkins County. And had I not joined my local volunteer department at 15 years old and become an EMT at 16 years old, most certainly would not be here today.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
I'll just add just a touch. Dan, thank you for mentioning the work that the EMS task force had done in a few years back. And not only were you and I, and Lisa was there as well in her role with the Office for Aging. And I won't belabor this long. You all know that I volunteer out in the community, and I missed a public safety meeting, or excuse me, budget committee meeting the other day because I was in the back of an ambulance on a cardiac arrest call. And one of those things that there were a couple of us available in the rural community at a certain time of day that's what happened. And there's fewer and fewer of us that are out there that are able to do that, particularly at certain points. Dan, we were at the cusp of moving toward this type of a resolution. And, I would tell you that what has changed in 3 or 4 years, and I think Michael would agree, is that the pandemic has exacerbated a lot of the problems that were there before. And we've continued to lose volunteers. We've continued to lose paid professionals who frankly have just plain burned out and moved on to other careers. You're seeing that happening in the nursing. We've also lost the EMT training programs that were taught for 40 years at TC3, just not existing now. And in fact, we don't even have a certified EMT course administration or program in Tompkins County right now, and not to anybody's fault. Mayor Hart has expressed some concerns, as was mentioned, and they're legitimate. We've also seen terrible increases related to mental health, much of it, no doubt, a fallout from the pandemic. There is a broader issue that's happening in the hospitals. If any of you read the Syracuse Post-Standard, 2 Sundays ago, it noted the number of patients that were turned away at the Syracuse hospitals. And I believe it was over 8,000 since the first of the year. And this is a system that has 4 hospitals in it. And speaking with some of Bang's paramedics, they're talking about the length of transports that they're doing now. I got involved in a call just last night where a local hospital was on diversion and we had to reroute to a distance. This is happening frequently. So there's some real systemic stresses there, also some generational stresses, and certainly some lingering pandemic stresses. And Michael and Rich, your timing on this, I think, is there, and as one of the responders, but also as a rural legislator, I appreciate this coming forward. Is there any further questions or comments? Ann?
As other people did, I just felt I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you also to the mayor of Trumansburg, Roden Hart, for bringing this to our attention and helping us figure out a solution. And thank you, Shauna, for meeting with Bang's ambulance and the mayor.
Thank you. Are we ready to vote?
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
11 ayes, 0 noes, motion passes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Shauna had an item that has been removed from the agenda. Just keep going.
Yeah, so I'm happy to add just a little bit why I removed it. So this software that's going to help with FOIL requests is going to be purchased through our budget committee using the contingent fund so that we could purchase it sooner than later because we really need it. So you'll see that soon if you're in budget.
Thanks, Shauna.
Thank you.
Next item, we dealt with weights and measures. Dan Klein, you've got two potential motions here.
Yeah, I'd like to move the Veteran Services staffing expansion, 63,750 from target.
Is there a second to that? Second by Veronica. Do you want to explain either Dan or Lisa the change that's been made here and what the effect of this is?
Sure. We were made aware yesterday of revenue from the state Dwyer funding that has come for veteran services through the mental health department that can be used towards staffing. And that will be ongoing funds to counties to support veterans, to support staffing and to support peer-to-peer programming. And so the over target request that was recommended in the budget by me is still recommended, but had we known about this revenue, I would have applied this revenue toward it. So this is just realizing this revenue.
Mike.
I think that's terrific. If we can get some grant funding to pay for this. I just would be awfully afraid that there might be some headline that says we reduce the money for our veteran services. So Dom, I know you've got your ears open over there, but we want to make sure people understand that we aren't reducing services. We're simply funding it in a different way.
We're actually expanding services.
Yes.
Further comments, questions? Are we ready to vote?
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
11 ayes, 0 noes, motion passes.
Thank you. Dan, do you have another regarding security for Department of Social Services?
Yes, I would like to move the next OTR to remove the OTR, the previous OTR for security for Department of Social Services for $33,162. And then I can explain why.
Motion made, second by Shauna.
So like the last one, this is not eliminating security at DSS. It's just changing the funding source as we've talked about before, and Lisa can add more if anyone has questions.
Are there any questions?
What's the new funding source?
Well, this really, it's the expense is still recognized in the DSS budget, but the revenue, we're taking the revenue, the interfund transfer that would have otherwise gone to the sheriff's department. So there is no new source of revenue. It's just that it will still be paid out of DSS to a contract agency.
Misstated, sorry about that.
This is an interfund issue, I understand. Further,
Just a budget cleanup or a OTR cleanup, I guess. Yeah.
further questions? Shall we vote?
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
11 ayes, 0 noes, motion passes.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan, for moving those forward. We get a couple more potential motions here, and I know that there may be a motion coming from the floor and some discussion as we get to an adoption of these amendments. So if we could handle the next couple, Mike Sigler, you have one on Lansing lunchbox.
I do. So the Lansing lunchbox is little like a food pantry up in Lansing, New York. It does get some funding through organizations like Triad. And that has sufficed for a while, but obviously Triad has a lot of needs. A lot of people calling it for money. And I think this is well enough established. They're going to obviously keep applying for these different grants. And I think Triad will stay on board. I have no idea, but you know, they apply for other grants as well. But, you know, there's always a constant need for food up there. And I wouldn't really have thought about it, except that, you know, we brought in Southside and that food program. Then I looked at Lansing Lunchbox, and I had been thinking about this over the summer, what kind of financial needs they have as well. So when that came up, I was like, you know, yeah, this definitely fits into the criteria the legislature's kind of laying down now for funding of these agencies. So all told, Lansing Lunchbox, it serves about 100 kids a month, or actually it's biweekly. So every 2 weeks, 100 kids are fed through this program. It's about 50 families. The interesting thing about the Lansing Lunchbox, the people that go to it, it's not the same families every month or every week. It changes. So that's an interesting part of the program. They may end up winding down the current grocery program. That's unclear yet. It depends on if the Lansing Food Pantry wants to take it back over, but they have quite the operation there. I've worked at it just to see kind of what it was like, and they welcomed me in to do that. They'll welcome you in to do it too if you want. And it's just a well-run operation and got a lot of people through the pandemic. And it's interesting that something that started because of the pandemic has continued on, and the need is still present and the need is still growing. And they certainly want to expand into other areas right now to combat hunger among kids. And I think it's something the county should invest in, not just in the city, but in the more rural areas. And it's not just Lansing people, it's run out of the rink, which is an interesting space. You know, community gave that space to, or I should say the rink gave that space to them to use, and they have refrigerators and a freezer, and people pull right through in their cars, and it's very anonymous to get. A lot of people use it. So that's why I thought $25,000, that's less than was asked for by the other groups, and that's why we're here. That's it.
Mike,
Thanks.
is it a motion?
That is my motion.
Is
As
there
I
a
explained it,
second?
that motion.
Second by Shauna Black. Further discussion? Shauna?
Yeah, so I'll build upon what Mike has added. They've been doing this for how many years, Mike?
God, well, I mean, literally almost as soon as the pandemic started.
Yeah, that's right. And it's run by at least two women that I know, Linda Pasto and Susan Tabrizi. And
Both school board members too. It was run through the
Yeah.
PTSOs.
yeah, no, that's right. And so it's volunteer run. I know that, I know Susan actually pretty much does it full time. And it's just a really great program. They recruit kids to help out people from the community. It's so very organized. They've been able to buy refrigerators. It's a growing program. And we talk about feeding kids. I mean, 100 kids every 2 weeks. The way that they do it is extremely anonymous. There's no shame to pick up your food. And I think it's just a really great program. So I hope we can do this.
Thanks, Shauna. I saw Veronica, Greg Mezzi, Mike Lane, and Amanda.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for bringing this forward, Mike. I already talked about how feeding people is important. What was I going to say? The thing about them starting at the beginning of the pandemic, I think some other people saw that the pandemic has like not just instigated, but like exacerbated and highlighted already existing needs. And it sounds like this is really one of them, and it makes sense that it would continue past. I wasn't familiar with Lansing Lunchbox until you submitted this. So I wonder if you can say, I mean, you've described it some, but like say a little more about like how much food are these folks getting? Is it like groceries to come home and cook, or things you can eat immediately? Just curious. And then also, I know I play sports at the rink occasionally, and there's this like Lansing Food Pantry sign in the corner. Is that like, that's it? Great.
So I mean, I can answer all the questions you have. I mean, and it's the nice thing about the food that you get too. It's not just off-brand, whatever. It's, I mean, if you were to get a cereal out of the cupboard that was provided by them, you'd be like, oh, it's, frosted, it's whatever, so it's nice in that regard. And they do try to kind of keep in good, good and name brand stuff too. It is food you can cook. It is not just prepackaged stuff either. When there's vegetables available, they will do the vegetables. I mean, they will do, it's canned fruit. It's a lot of canned stuff. It is prepackaged stuff, but it's more like pasta and then pasta sauce and things like that. But there is meat available as well. You actually can go online and there's your shopping list and you can tick off what you're going to use, which is a great feature. So they were kind of like ahead of the game too in that is, how to make this easy for people, how to remove shame from it. And literally you just pull through your car and they put it in your box. The nice thing too is you've got people who are doing the pickup. Food's not even for them. Like they're delivering to 6 families out wherever who don't have food. So you have no idea who's, and it really is a very big community effort to get it done. And like I said, it did run through the school. In fact, their whole organization was under the PTSO. Now they have become their own 501. So now they can take funds in other places. Longest time they were under the.
Thanks, Mike, for that. Greg, Mike, and Amanda and Ann.
Yeah, fully support this. I think trying to put food in front of our youth and the challenges that many providers for kids face today. This is important. I'd love to see programs like this pop up all across the county, and hopefully this can be a model example or a parent organization to other community-based solutions. So if this helps kind of kickstart something like that, I think it's a great way for us to be able to put money back into the community in a very critical need, because we'll have the impact hopefully to impact a child's life. In a previous part of my life, I had the opportunity to get to understand and work with the National School Lunch Program a little bit, and what that means for a lot of kids in certain communities, and being able to provide hot meals and breakfast and food, and sometimes that's the only opportunity they have for wholesome, nutritious food. So if we can be doing more and we can be making sure that food is getting into the homes and teaching people how to cook and interact with each other and make food choices, this is money well spent. If this was a bigger number, I would have supported it too. So, but I think this is a good start, and look forward to hopefully the rest of my colleagues here will be supporting this as well.
Thanks, Greg. Mike Lane.
I think we're going to see food security becoming an even greater issue with the rapid inflation that we're looking at, and folks not having as much money to buy food with. But my question, Mike, I don't know this group or this organization. Is this a 501c3?
It is now. Yeah. It used to be run through the PTSO, and they just got that within the last.
Okay, because I was going to say, I didn't think we could probably give it to them if they weren't a formal group like that.
They are. It is in the email from Mr. Breezy. So we're good to go.
Thanks for clarifying that, Mike. And Mike. Amanda.
Yeah, thanks. I'm still clarifying what I'm going to say in my brain. So I will support this. Obviously, giving food to kids, very important thing to do. But I'm going to channel Deborah Dawson for a second and just remind us all that, we're taking this money out of fund balance and the numbers going down bit by bit. And I know we all have our pet projects. We all have things that we want to bring forward, and that's wonderful. But as Mike said earlier, a lot of these organizations could be asking for funding through our community recovery fund, and they should all be coming forward. Mike said something just now about something along the lines of seems to be the what'd you say? This seems to be like the baseline for what the legislature is, how we're funding these things. We're setting a new precedent. And
it doesn't sound like me.
You said something.
I mean, it's smart. That's why I don't think it sounds like me.
Something along the lines of that. And that's just what I've been thinking. It's starting to feel a little bit like anybody can bring their pet project forward. And I sort of wish that I had thought of bringing my pet projects forward. So Just being a little critical of you all right now. So thanks.
Always next year, Amanda.
Oh, there's also next week.
Bring it on.
I thank you for making sure Deborah was represented here tonight too. And did you have?
I was just wanted to say, first off, that wasn't snarky enough if you were imitating Deborah Dawson, but it's true. Okay. Chris.
I can roll my eyes if you want.
So one question that I had a couple comments. How many days a week is this, Mike?
5 days a week. But no, well, they do it. So it's 1 day every 2 weeks and you come and you get 2 weeks worth of food. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. So this is in addition to their, this sounds like part of their, so this is part of their food pantry, right? That you come and.
Well, no.
Or is it different? This is not having to sign up for their.
Right.
To qualify for their food pantry is
Nope,
different?
less qualifications.
Less qualification, okay. Thanks. I like the idea, and some of the pantries are doing this, like you said, signing up ahead of time, a lot less waste. If you can sign up for the groceries that you can use and that you want. And this addresses hunger, which is a huge issue. As you said, if you can feed people, then they can focus on their work. They can focus on schooling. They can focus on the other things they need to do to survive and thrive. I like that there's also, some name brands, because I've been on food stamps before. You don't always get name brand, things like that. So I'd be happy to support this. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Any further questions, comments? Dan Klein.
So we've been a little inconsistent on asking about the entire budget for these different organizations that we're dealing with. So I would just like to throw that in. I'd be interested in asking them, I'll vote for this tonight, but asking them for their complete budget so we can see what part of this ours is. And if it comes up in the future, we can then start to see if we're replacing someone else's funding, which is you brought up as a different issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. I see a hand from Randy.
Yes, I'll support this. It does seem to me to be singling out Lansing to get this benefit and not other towns. But I will support it. When you look at Enfield, which is by far the largest supplier of volunteers, there's over 40 volunteers involved in that food pantry, and they feed more families than anybody else by far. And we're not supporting them. So I'll support this, but I think that to Amanda's point, we're funding a lot of things and picking this one over other ones. That's just how I feel about it. So.
Thanks, Randy. Lisa.
I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention that we provide annual and ongoing funding through the Human Services Coalition to the food pantry network throughout the county. So any local municipality that has a food pantry receives funds through the Human Services Coalition process, and they do submit an application for funding, and their budgets are reviewed through that process. So I think that the Lansing Lunchbox is in addition to that.
In addition, meaning it's not included in that.
I don't believe it's been included in that process. There may be another food pantry in Lansing that is part of that. I could look that up, but I don't believe it's the Lansing Lunchbox.
So perhaps that's a program we want to be taking a look at next year into the budget process. And thanks, Lisa. Mike?
Yeah, I was saying the same thing. I think probably next year they ought to go through the HSC.
Okay. Are we ready to vote?
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
11 ayes, 0 noes, motion passes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Ann Corman, Veronica Pillar, under Human Services Coalition and discussion teen coordinator position.
Thank you. Just let me pull it back up again. So Veronica and I talked with the director of Southside, and one of the issues that they're having as far as being able to expand their programming is that, for instance, the director, Kayla, she's having to do program because they can't afford to hire people to do some of their programming. So in a snapshot, this 25,000, or I'm sorry, is that what it is, right? 25,000 would help fund fund somebody to do the teen, part of the teen programming for a year and free her up to be able to get more training and to be able to apply for more grants. So kind of to jumpstart them so that they're anticipating hopefully being able to increase their revenue, apply for more grants, and maintain their level of programming. In the future, hopefully they're even going to be able to, hopefully going to expand their program. So this is a teen program that you have a big description on. And so this is for folks, for children in the South Side, teens. And so they get a lot of folks who are, a lot of kids who are people of color. They get a lot of people, you know, that might have low incomes. So this is, to me, actually a historically underfunded organization. And I think it meets a lot of our goals for the county as far as diversity, equity, and inclusion to support a program like this. And again, this is for 1 year to help them jumpstart this so that they can figure out how to fund this and other programs. So it's helping the administrator step back from actually doing programs. So did I forget anything else, Veronica?
Yeah, I think that's basically it. I want to highlight Annie said that Southside mostly serves a lot of Black and brown folks. They, as an organization, they focus on supporting, like unapologetically supporting Black and brown youth, which I think is really important and part of our like diversity and equity mission throughout the county. And there's pretty unique as an organization that does that and can do that as freely as they do. And also want to tie it back to this, like the fundings for a teen coordinator, but as Annie said, teen coordinator, but as Annie said, it would free up Kayla, at least if not other administrative staff, to do some of this like grant writing, applying that they tried to do. But I mean, we talked about this in our county context. It's hard and like a whole extra piece of work. And so if she were able to do that, I think that would like address, like it's a place to launch from, and it would address a lot of the concerns folks here had about the other request about like, like how efficiently are you running yourself? That figuring that out takes work. Also, apologizing on behalf of Kayla, she wanted to be here as well tonight to answer questions, but the city is also having a budget hearing and also talking about community agencies, so she's over there.
Yeah, and someone had mentioned about, I think it was the previous one about applying for our ARPA funds, our recovery grant program, and they intend to apply for that. But they're saying, yes, we are going to apply, but they're struggling with finding the time to do that, like in real time. And they want to do that. They have, I think some projects that a project that could be eligible. I think it was updating their kitchen was construction, so that they could eventually serve more foods and not have dangerous older, I don't want to say dangerous, but it's a code thing, but newer kitchen equipment more efficient kitchen equipment. So to me, that sounded, more like ARPA funding request or our recovery grants. And so this sounded more like it was something, that when we're looking at, one-time things that aren't necessarily construction or fall, it didn't seem like it would fall under the recovery grant. Otherwise, I would have told them to apply for that. But so I'm hoping we can consider this. And so if it was approved, what we would do would put it in contingency pending working with the Human Services Coalition on administering this and working with them on contractually meeting the obligations that they would have through the county. Is that correct, Norma?
It is, thank you. It would have to go through the contingent fund. I will say that because this didn't come to the Human Services Coalition through their normal budget review process, I don't know, it's going to be completely up to that agency to make a decision like this. And it is a concern that it might set a precedence to go outside of that process. So I'm just letting you know that it could sit in contingent fund and for a while.
Right. And we have broken that precedent before. Just want to say a couple times where we have done that and awarded some grants to organizations that do go through the Human Services Coalition.
And so are you making a motion on this?
Making a motion.
And Veronica is seconding. Mike Lane.
I'm just looking at the big sheets here and I was trying to understand what happened with this. It looks like it wasn't recommended by the county administrator, am I right? But it does show one-time recommendation of 25,000, or is this a different?
It's different.
It's a different one.
Yes, this
Okay.
I didn't review this.
That explains it.
Any questions, comments? Greg?
Do you know if they're asking the city for any support in terms of staffing and if so, to what level and for what? I just want to see what they're asking the city for.
They are, and they're not able to be here.
They are asking the city for support. I don't know how much. I heard them talk about asking the city for funds for the kitchen, but I think maybe that's not recommended. We could pull up the city budget here on YouTube if you really want to know, but that seems weird.
They said that, I believe Kayla said that this was not something that they were asking for, this particular thing.
That's correct.
Got it. I guess I would like to see in the totality of things what they are asking for. If this is truly a need, and again, this goes back to the youth services conversation we had earlier. But again, seeing crumbs and not seeing the whole cookie for me sometimes is challenging to make a decision. As I'm a cookie guy, I like cookies, by the way. But again, I support the efforts and I support the work that this group is doing. But they have a food program that they're running. If they're looking to expand, staffing or additional resources from the city, as it continues to grow and grow and grow, I just want to understand what the whole impact is or what the whole vision is. So I wouldn't be opposed to supporting this in the recovery fund process or potentially at another time. I struggle with this right now because in parallel, the same conversation is happening with our colleagues in the city. And I'd like to see how it kind of all plays out before we make a commitment here. And that's where sort of I sit on this one.
Thanks, Greg. Shauna, then Dan.
Yeah, I have some similar thoughts to Greg's. I feel like, it's a shame that they couldn't be represented tonight because I have some more questions about the metrics and the actual programming and the position. And I am curious to see what the city is, how the city's funding them. Southside, I don't believe we have funded them in the past. Is that right?
We fund them through the Human Services Coalition process.
Right, and that's, I
But
think
not-
we've done around 10,000 in the. in
Yeah,
the
like
past.
9 or
It's-
10,000.
Yeah, it has been a small amount. And I think I agree with what Mike said initially was that, you know, what we need to be mindful of next year is these agencies really should go through the Human Services Coalition next year because they're able to vet them, they're able to follow them, they're able to offer their services, consulting services if they're struggling with the position. And there's a reporting process that they make them accountable. And I think, I mean, that's why we pay the Human Services Coalition, and that's why we typically go through them. So I'm probably going to vote no on this.
Any further comments, questions? Then Dan? Actually, I think I was supposed to go to Dan first.
You haven't talked, right? Go first.
Yeah, I also just have some concerns for the same reasons. I wish they had gone through the Human Services Coalition. And I also, it's the city, it's part of a city thing. I kind of wish the city, I feel like the city should have more responsibility in this than we do. And I could be mistaken, but I think I'm right. It's that maybe about 10 years ago, the city offered to make Southside a city department, and Southside rejected that funding. Now, I know in some ways that's ancient history, but it speaks to me that, you know, I would like to see the city be the funder of this and less the county. So I don't know, I'm a little torn. I'm quite torn.
Thanks, Dan. Veronica and Randy.
Thank you. I'm trying to look up the Southside request to the city, and I'm not, fluent in city budget speak, so it's not working. This came up when I talked to Kayla, the Southside, like becoming part of the city. And one of the reasons, or the reason that Kayla cited to me, she wasn't there at the time, or not as an employee, maybe as like a child. What she cited to me was that the freedom that an organization has to like focus on what it wants to focus on, and specifically for Southside, a lot of it is Black youth empowerment. That freedom looks really different if you are your own nonprofit organization versus if you are a government entity. So they didn't want to like give up and pare down the types of services they were able to provide, and that would have come with becoming part of the city. And yeah, I love that we have GIAC to do sort of similar youth programming as part of the city. And I think it's helpful that Southside is a different thing. So like, it wasn't free money is basically what I'm trying to say. And the other thing is just, I have a question, like I get all the concerns about going through the Human Services Coalition process. And I think that it's, organizations should do that. And I know that this was mentioned about the Lansing lunchbox thing too, which I'm glad we supported. And I'm wondering if someone could explain why this is a really big deal for this OTR and it was just a mere mention for the previous one.
I can answer that for myself, is that they are part of the Human Service Coalition process. They should know, they should have known that this, should have gone through there. That's my answer.
I'll speak for myself. I personally know the directors of the Lansing Lunchbox. I know their dedication. I know them personally. I don't know the people that are working at Southside. And,
I could say the
get that you
same
do.
thing in the other way. So what's the difference?
No, and I
I'm
get
sorry.
that, but that's my confidence level. I know these two women that are running that production that have run it for, 2 or 3 years through COVID, and I have faith in where they're going to put the 25,000. I mean, the person that you're referring to isn't even here to answer questions. And I understand that she's at another meeting, but we've had 2 weeks to put in OTRs.
Okay, Randy's had his hand up here for a minute, and then Ian.
Yes, I tend to agree. It should have gone through the Health and Human Services or Service Coalition. But I also believe in team coordinators. And I trust Ann and Veronica's judgment, and I will vote for it.
Thanks, Randy. Amanda.
I understand your frustration, Veronica, and I've been trying to parse this out for myself as we've gone through this process. And I've thought about this in past years, but there's a lot of requests this year. I feel like way more than in the past 4 years, from my perspective. Maybe I'm wrong, but every day we seem to get more and more, and I don't really feel like that happened before. Not that that matters what happened in the past, but unfortunately, this is coming at the end of the process. And for me, I can't speak for anyone else, this, as I said with the last one, this is depleting our fund balance. And I was just looking at this sheet again that Norma talked about at the beginning, total net fund balance, 17 million. Well, if the fund balance doesn't get added to, and we have that other 10 million that is already allocated, then we're down to, less than 10 million in fund balance. And so it's a balance. This whole conversation is a balance. And you have to decide, what you feel like you personally want to fund and what you don't. And there's nothing, I don't think anyone is saying this isn't a valid program, or these people aren't working hard, or it's, there's something wrong with it. Some people are asking for more information. But, if one chooses to vote no, that doesn't mean they don't value the organization. It just means they don't want to fund it right now. So that's my answer to your question, which is a good question.
Thanks, Amanda. Ann, did you have additional?
Yes, I want to just push back on some of the things that some people said of like, I know this person, I know the organization. I trust my fellow legislators that they know the people that are running these things, and I would hope that they trust us. So I think that's a neutral, a net neutral thing. There wasn't pushback again with the Lansing lunchbox, like where's the town of Lansing? I think if we were saying this program, or possibly I'll say, if we were saying there's this program for people of color, people with lower incomes out in Enfield, might it be different? I think sometimes, I really do, that sometimes when we think of something in the city and we hear about, oh, the city's supposed to be funding this, I think we have a little bit of something going on. And
I don't.
With the
It's
city.
geography. I kind of resent that.
Okay. All right, well, I'll try and be more factual. Sometimes we say like the city should be funding this, but people aren't saying that. I think if the program was out in Lansing or Enfield or Ulysses, maybe we wouldn't be saying that. This is a really good program, and this is to help jumpstart this program that there's very few organizations that are out there in the community doing diversity, equity, justice work. Very few. And did they get all their ducks in the row? Did this come in the last minute? There are concerns of that, but just try and take a breath, take it on its merit. This is really trying to help an organization so that they can focus on, this is 1 year, $25,000, and it's going to be in contingent fund based on approval from the Human Services Coalition, who we said we wish it would have gone through there. Well, we're saying it will go through there. And if they say no, then it's a no. And here is Kayla. Kayla, we're just in the midst of this. Can you tell us a little bit about what the 25,000, so some issues that were brought up about this didn't go through the Human Services Coalition, but we were saying it's still going to, if it's approved, it's going to have to go through permission of and oversight of the Human Services Coalition. So that's been one of the issues. And that it was brought in at the last minute. So anything else that we want to tell her?
City funding.
Pardon me, overall budget funding for your whole department.
So from the city, we only get 200,000 a year. Actually, I just left a city meeting asking for an increase. However, when it comes to the Human Service Coalition, the reason why we didn't include it is because we put priority and on the hot meal program, and we figured we can ask the city for salaries and such things. And like this hot meal program could overall benefit the county. So why not try with the county? However, the reason why this position is important and one of the things I asked for was because hiring on another or a team coordinator will allow for me to have more time in my schedule to focus on finances and generate more income into the center. This will include partnering on projects. Currently, there is a project that we are partnering with another local organization with. However, due to me having to be a part of some team programming and doing other things, my time has kind of been constrained. So it will open up more windows like that. I would also be able to attend grant workshops and build my skills on grant writing and look for more grants for the center, as well as the team coordinator will help conduct events and fundraising held with the teens, also creating partnerships to get our teens out in order to and involved with more organizations, which then we could collaborate with grants on as well. So all things will essentially increase revenue.
And I didn't quite introduce you, Kayla Matos, Matos, and you're the director, is that your title? The
Deputy Director.
Deputy Director at Southside Community Center. And thank you for literally, looks like running over here from the Ithaca City meeting.
Thanks, Ann. Thanks. Mike Sigler, you had the hand up. Yeah.
Well, just quickly, the reason this is different, I mean, Lansing Lunchbox was food. It was in response to the Southside community kind of that was also food. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't fund this or should fund it. It's just fundamentally different. This was a Southside Community Center came forward with a food program. They showed that they were getting money from someplace else too. So we were kind of just adding to the pot. Same thing with the Lansing Lunchbox. What you're asking for here is the creation of a new position. And frankly, it's been my experience that once you create a position, that position stays because, hey, it's no longer some amorphous position. It's Dean working down the hall or Sally, and then it's a person, and it's harder to get rid of that. So that's why I would be a little more cautious of this. It's not, I don't know if you need a teen center person or not. We just approved one for, our youth, the counties kind of thing. I mean, so it's not like we're sloughing off the youth of Tompkins County here.
We're also talking about a community center that serves people of color.
Well, so does the county.
Yeah, no, the county does, but this organization is unapologetically serving people of color, which means that.
Ma'am, I would suggest that the county is also unapologetically serving people of color.
And however, we can be more explicit about our actions and who we are serving. And we are serving people of color in Lansing. We are serving people of color in Dryden, in Freeville, in the county. Actually, we are serving people of color in those places more than we are serving people of color in the city of Ithaca due to gentrification.
I don't deny any of the things you're saying, but what I'm saying to you.
But what you're saying is that a teen coordinator in a community center of color is not important. That is serving.
I think we need to get back to the discussion among the board. Thank you for answering the question, Kayla and Mike. Any further? And did I see a hand over here? Rich?
Just following up, you started to say something. Did you ask the city for this money?
I'm sorry, the city for this money?
Yes.
No, we did not. The city, we asked the city for our pre-teen coordinator program because we in our pre-teen program, we have about 15 to 20 participants. Currently in our teen program, we have another about 20 participants. In our after-school program, we have 40 participants that we are serving on a regular basis, Monday through Friday in specific programs. So having to serve all these teens going to schools because we're in the middle schools, we're in the high school, we're doing literal public safety work where for example, today we had to go to the middle school and help resolve a situation with with the teen. Or for example, if we see I'm getting out of my bed at 9 o'clock in the morning.
No, that's okay. But
I'm just describing our work that we're doing.
Yeah. Is there a reason you didn't go to the city for this funding and you're coming here?
Well, because if you'd like to know.
Yes.
There was an opportunity like, okay, hey, if we can't do this, is there another thing that you guys could do we could do for you guys? So my next thought process was our teen coordinator, which I've been trying to put an importance on, and I've been trying to find somebody to do to lessen my workload.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Gail. Ann?
And I'd like to reemphasize again, when we talked with you, that if you're struggling to apply for grants such as, which you've known about for a while, the community recovery grants, if you're struggling to find the time to apply for that in other grants, this is about priming the pump to take that programming out of your schedule for a one-year thing. And if that doesn't work, I mean.
Sorry, Annie, to cut you off, but I spent 4 hours today dealing with that teen, when that 4 hours could have went towards the recovery grant. If I had a teen coordinator in place, I could then send her to the schools and have her dealing with the families and navigating everything, where I can then still be in my office writing these grants or going to these workshops or partnering with these organizations.
Thanks. Greg?
I think that the grant writing is an issue for any organization that seeks their funding through a significant source of grant writing. I think we could have a line out the door. I made a strong advocation, I guess. What's the right word? Is that the right? For funding for the arts community, which again, different community, but also fully funded in many parts by grants, right? So any organization is going to struggle to write grants. That's unfortunately the nature, and some of these grant programs are just really challenging. And that's part of the problem, is these overcomplicated grant applications that should probably be much simpler, but for some reason they're very long and cumbersome and they take time. So I think that that's a challenge. I hear that as one argument. But I think there's so many organizations that could make that argument about the difficulty to write grants. I also applaud you and my colleagues for taking an opportunity and speaking up and saying, I need something, and asking the question of the community and saying, what do you need? And every organization didn't do that. And it may be a slippery slope or a dangerous precedent. But we have to kind of weigh what's in front of us right now. I don't really know where I'm going to end up on this one, but it's admirable. You're here. It's 7 o'clock, right? You're obviously putting in the work. You went to the city. I would like to see more holistically what your organization's sort of plan and strategy is, you know, with the city, with the county, on a more of a long-term basis, because I do think the work that you're doing is critical and needs to be done and needs to be expanded. And I appreciate the fact that you're reaching outside of the city of Ithaca into the rest of the community to do that work, because I do think you provide a valuable space to many people within our community. I guess I want to understand a little bit more how, and maybe it's not for right now, but as a longer term discussion, how Southside, the county, the city, our other organizations, you know, the Human Service Coalition can really make sure that the work that you do continues to be impactful and is accelerated. So those are just kind of my thoughts. But again, you know, Annie and Veronica, I appreciate you putting these type of things forward, because it challenges us to really think about what's a priority and what we need to be funding. So yeah, so thanks for coming. I don't know what I'm getting at, but I appreciate it.
And can I just add one thing about like our plan? Definitely, we would love to sit down. This year, we decided to be bold and ask for increases, because at least with my last 5 years here at the center, we've pretty much just got whatever the recommended amount was. Okay, thank you. But this year, we're trying to honor and recognize the work that we have been putting into our community, the organizations, the districts that we've been working with. we brought these last 2 years, we've had every July, we brought over 150 cyclists into Ithaca, Black cyclists into Ithaca who have cycled around the lake and spent 4 days here enjoying Ithaca, the scenery and what we have to offer. So we are helping teens navigate through predominantly white institutions, predominantly white towns. So our families. Pretty much what I'm trying to get at is that our resources and how we are serving the community is always changing because their needs are always changing. So yeah, but thank you for giving me the time to come and speak to you guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Galen. Greg, thanks for your comments. And certainly through this process, we've seen a lot of different community activities that maybe some of us weren't fully aware of. And it's been educational, at least for me as a new person. Shauna.
Yeah, I just want to also applaud you for coming this evening. It's never fun going from meeting to meeting, begging, peddling your goods and begging for money. So I applaud you. I was wondering, you mentioned that you cater to 20 teens. Is that what's in your program right now?
So the 20 teens is like our specifically the Black Girl Alchemy program. So those are 20 teens that are from 8th through 11th grade. And the Black Girl Alchemy the program is more so an initiative where we're doing like direct mentorship, group mentorship. We're having like these pocket events. So several things. We go on retreats. And within these retreats and these gatherings, we're having conversations with the girls about growing into womanhood, adulthood, finding their voices. We're helping them navigate life and what it means to be a teenager in Ithaca, New York. How the barriers that they're facing, how do we get through them, not around them? Many things. We also are going, since our girls program is so successful, now we are also building out a Black boy or a Black King of Alchemy, which will be pretty much a similar program to our Black Girl Alchemy, but for our boys. Then we have the Friday night game nights that we're serving 20 teens in that, and that's all boys. Every Friday night, 6 to 9 p.m. They're in all over the South Side playing Manhunt, playing the Xbox, playing the PlayStation, just enjoying themselves, just giving them space to be themselves, be young boys, and not have to worry about the social constraints that they have going on. And then the preteen program, that's serving roughly 15 teens Monday through Friday. And like I said, that's various activities going on. And that is a group that is currently doing the writing workshop.
So currently you're the one that's organizing those kids?
G Kwan, who we hired on this year, is organizing the preteen kids. Yes, I'm doing the Black Girl Alchemy group, and we have aspirations for G Kwan to be running the Black Kings of Alchemy.
Okay, so this position, which program would they be running? Black
Girl Alchemy, but also helping build out the Black Kings of Alchemy and frame that work. Since Rosanna right now she's being contracted, but we'd love to bring her on. Her and I are like one of the starts of the Black Girl Alchemy girls. Black Girl Alchemy started about 4 to 5 years ago when we got our first Novo grant for $90,000. And we've been, within the last 4 or 5 years, we've been reshaping it and seeing what does that mean to our city. So like I said, we were one of the first 2 girls that got mentored through this program. And we fell in love with the work that was being done and what we were being taught. And we are now continuing the program for younger generations.
So you would hire a part-time person to take over those programs?
Yep.
Okay. And then 25,000 would be enough money to fund that part-time person?
Yep. And then with the aspirations that we will be able to have grants and be able to sustain that salary for years to come.
Okay.
So we just one time to pilot it, get it secured, and then continue.
Okay. So I am willing to vote for this for 1 year. That's not to say my colleagues will. If for some reason this doesn't get voted through, I would encourage you to call up our consultant and get some help with applying for our recovery fund, because I think this would be a good program and you can be judged on that. Okay.
Thank you.
I think you have 2 opportunities here. Okay.
Okay.
I see one more question from Randy, and we've got a little bit more business we've got to conduct yet tonight. Randy, then Ann.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Yeah, it's good to hear that Southside Community Center is also reaching out to other areas of the county. I wasn't aware of that. I think this is an opportunity for us to do something specific for people of color and to show that we are supporting things we do. So that's what I'm voting for.
Thanks. Ann?
Just wanted to quickly say, I don't believe staffing is covered under unfortunately, our community recovery grants, right?
One-time costs. So
Yes, it's covered.
Yeah. I think it's.
so long as it's packaged as a one-time funding opportunity.
Any further questions, comments? Shall we vote?
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
No.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
Yes.
10 ayes, 1 no, motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Need a little guidance here. We've gotten to the end of the resolutions that, or the motions that we knew were going to be presented tonight. And I know that Dan has got something, but prior to having Dan bring that forward, could I ask administration, Lisa and Norma, give us a recap of where we are right now at the end of the motions? And do we want to take 5 minutes before we do that and stretch? Okay.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Let's adjourn here. Well, not adjourn, recess for 5 minutes here. Come back.
Yeah, that was pretty much a mess. Oh, it was a mess. And I don't.
I'm advised that we're ready to go. Shall,
I don't like those words.
Yeah.
shall we reconvene? Okay, thanks, everybody, for taking a quick break. It was time to stretch. As we've gotten through the motions that were submitted to this point, knowing that there's one more, at least, can I ask our budget folks to give us a recap and tell us where we are at this point in time?
Broke my database. Yep, I got it now. All right, so presently we have a tax levy of 52,887,521. Our tax rate is $5.70. And the tax levy increase is 0.93, which is a tax decrease of 6.6%.
52,887,521.
Tax levy.
Tax rate.
Tax rate, $5.70.
Tax rate, $5.70, decrease of 93 cents.
Tax levy increase of 0.93%.
Tax levy increase 0.93.
Mhm.
And it's a 6.6%
Decrease in tax rate over last year.
decrease in tax rate over last year. And that equates to $5.70.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dan, did you have a motion or a discussion item you'd like to bring forward?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I would like to make an amendment to the budget to take $490,000 out of fund balance and apply it to the tax levy. And if somebody will second it, I'll have a few more remarks to make.
Motion made by Dan to take $490,000 out of fund balance, and motion is seconded by Greg Mezzi. And Dan, would you speak to that?
Thank you. So that dollar amount is enough to bring the tax levy change to zero. Why am I proposing this? Couple of remarks. One is because the county is in excellent financial shape. As you look at these numbers, as I look at these numbers, that's how I interpret them. And this would give a little bit back to the property taxpayer. We do some version of this almost every year. And there is always a discussion about whether this is how risky this is financially. And certainly welcome. I certainly have some remarks to make about that if the discussion gets to that point. I do not believe that this is a particularly risky move to make. And then my last comments have to do with why that number, why the tax levy, why is it trying to zero out the tax levy? Somebody at some point in all our budget meetings over the last 6 weeks or so, I think it might have been Deborah, said something like, well, you know, a lot of these numbers that we generate are arbitrary. And I thought I was like proud of her for saying that, whoever said that, because it's like a kind of thing you don't say out loud, but it's true. Not all of them, but many of them are arbitrary. It doesn't mean they're totally made up out of nothing, but like, for instance, when we did the food program the other day, we were like, well, should we do 27,000 or 25,000? It was somewhat arbitrary, right? They're both real numbers, but we just picked one. So for this project, for bringing down the tax levy, I'm choosing to zero out the tax levy. We could focus on the tax rate instead. We could focus on a percentage. We could focus on a dollar amount. They're all legitimate. They're all valid. I'm just picking one. One's not particularly better than the other, but that's just the one that I landed on. So that is my motion.
Thanks, Dan. Moved and seconded. Further comment on the motion? Mike?
Dan, I opposed your motion last year and I'm going to oppose it this year. And I see where you're coming from. But every year our costs at the county increase. We settled our labor contracts with at least 3% and plus on some of them increases. We have increases we've already looked at it in the budget, for electricity, for fuel, for asphalt, for police cars, for pencils. We're going through an inflationary spiral, which we haven't seen since about 1979. We're looking right now at a tax levy increase, half of what we asked our county administrator to plan for last April. I think it's pretty remarkable that with the things that we have put back into the budget with the amendments, that we are still only at less than 1% on the levy. And the levy is the right thing to look at, Dan, I agree, not the tax rate. And for many, many years, we argued about whether it be the levy or the tax rate. You see a lot of the towns and villages will talk about the tax rate change or not change. But it's the levy is the amount of money taken from the real property tax base. And that's the one that counts. And that's why at the state level, there is a cap on the levy, not on the tax rate. I was attacked last year. I ran for re-election and because I voted to have a small increase in the tax levy. And I'm sorry, but I think it's honest with my taxpayers in my district to say that our costs go up. So I think we ought to leave it where it is. And that's what I've got to say.
Thanks, Mike. Randy?
Yes, I have a question for Norma first. So what is the 18% that we put aside fund balance? How much is that?
36.4 million.
Okay, and how much is left that we could have spent?
25.7 million.
No, after all, is down to 17 million?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. After we've spent, it's 17.3 million.
Okay, so that
was prior to this evening. I have not rerun those numbers, but.
Did you tell me, Norma, earlier though, that the $36.4 million is reserved going into
That's
this?
correct. Yes.
And that we are working with the starting point at 25 that was above that, and it's worked down to 17 now, give or take. So we are maintaining the 36 million for the 18% in the proposed budget at this point that's being moved to amend.
And we're 17 million above that 18%.
So
it's
just 17 million, 16.9.
Okay, so I look at this isn't our money. This is the people's money. And the county, even through the pandemic, increased its fund balance. So, I mean, if you look at the last 10 years, I think the county has always increased its fund balance. It's not our money. So I support Dan. I'm surprised we're not reducing it 2 million, but so that's why I'm voting for Dan's.
Okay, thanks, Randy. Ann, and then Rich John.
Thank you. I think I probably voted against this in prior years and And I'm going to vote for it this year because I was wrong. At least as far as like our available fund balance, I do hear concerns, there are a lot of concerns about inflation. And those are real concerns to me. You know, you've proposed in other years larger amounts, if I remember correctly, sometimes over $1 million. And so I appreciate you, asking for this amount, the 490,000. That's something I feel, comfortable with, of trying to keep our taxes down, just a little bit. We don't know what this 2023 is going to bring. And we say that every year. Could this be different? Yes, but this time I'm going to vote for it.
Thanks, Ann. Rich, Amanda, and then Greg.
Yeah, thank you, Dan, for bringing this motion. I will support. In the back of my head, I'm thinking we're likely going to see some real economic change in 2023 that may not be good. But right at present, it does seem like casino revenue and sales tax revenue are going to add to our fund balance at the end of this year. I feel pretty confident that we can fund this $490,000. And certainly this is the month where people sit with their school tax bill, and the 8.5% that the Ithaca City School District just added to their tax rate. I think we should send a good message and set an example for them. So yes, I will support.
Thanks, Rich. Amanda.
I have supported this in the past. And I was questioning it a bit more this year, because I think it is a question of risk, and each of us has to decide for yourself and for your constituents, how worth it is it? How much risk are you willing to take? I know we just went through a pandemic and things are recovering to some extent, but I do feel like things are more uncertain going forward. And I just made several speeches about, giving money away. As Dan pointed out, this isn't giving money away, this is giving money back. But we live in a community that we're giving money to all these services. The community voted for us to sit in these seats to decide how to spend their money. So I guess I'll stop there. We'll see how I vote.
Well, more to come here. Greg.
Yeah, Dan, I appreciate you being the bearer of this motion. I wish you would have done more. I think when we look at our risk, some might call me crazy, but I think you also have to look at the risk of our constituents, of the residents in the county. And they're at risk because they're not sitting on a 18% reserve and $17 million additional, or the ability to borrow money at a much, healthier rate than we can, or readily available, credit rating like we have the ability to. So I'm okay with the risk. I don't think 400,000, I don't think $1 million, I don't think 2 million really would make a huge difference to the county. But I do think it would make a huge difference to the taxpayer and to our community. And so I am fully on board with supporting this. If somebody made the number higher, I'd be on board supporting that too. But I think we've over collected, and I think it's time to send a little bit back. And I don't think that there's a better time or more of a time of need than our current economic condition that we're in. So I hope the rest of my colleagues will get on board with this.
Thanks, Greg. Shauna.
Yeah, so I have actually voted for this every single year Dan has proposed it. And I have to say this year I'm actually concerned, because I feel like in this budget we were very, very generous. And every time we add something to take out of our fund balance, we see that number go down, down, down. And I know there's a special number that we have to keep it within in order for us to keep our rating. And that's what allows us to get great interest rates and also feel comfortable whenever we hit hard times. Whenever we were in the pandemic, we had a lot of money in the bank. So whenever it came to us providing COVID testing, whenever it came to us providing help to the food bank or whatever was needed, we were able to say yes every single time. The problem I'm having right now is the fact that the stock market continues to be extremely volatile. The interest rate is all over the place. And I do think that we're in for some hard times. So this is the one year I'm not going to support it.
Thanks, Shauna. Further comments? No further comments on it. I'm struggling myself here a little bit, and I haven't made up my mind, and we'll see where we go here in a second. I'm just going to talk out loud for a second, because when we sat down to set the goals for the administrator, I did cite some concerns that I had from a little bit of a rural perspective, but more from the working perspective, and had to do with what we were struggling at with fuel oil costs, with gasoline costs, and so on. And in true, we concentrate on that tax levy number, Mike, and for a whole variety of reasons. And Deborah has reminded us through that process. And but I do keep coming back to the tax rate, and why I do that is because of the number of constituents that I've had come forward that have told me about their assessments through no fault of their own. And without a true reduction in the tax rate, those increases in the assessments translate into pretty much an automatic tax increase. And I've heard it loud and clear that this is a tough thing. And to your point, Rich, the school tax bills, they really color where I'm thinking tonight as well. So, but I think this budget is moved forward, has really addressed a number of pressing community priorities, and I appreciate the work that's gone forward on it. So, any further comments? If not, shall we vote on the amendment offered by Dan Klein?
Shauna Black,
No.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
No.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
No.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
I have 8 ayes and 3 noes. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you, everybody. You will not regret it.
Shall we move forward with a resolution and fill these highlights in so that we can present move toward presenting an amended tentative budget for the November 7th meeting? And the resolution ID number 11158, adoption of amendments to the 2023 tentative Tompkins County budget and 2023 to 2027 capital program. And we're looking to place in this tax levy amount of, thanks, I got the light on here and the new $600 glasses. $52,397,521. So the tax levy amount, $52,397,521, resulting in an approximate tax levy increase of 0% and countywide average tax rate of $5.65 per thousand, which is a decrease of 7.5%. Resolved further, and I'll come back to it, but it reflects a median priced home increased from $205,000 in 2021 to $225,000 in 2022. As amended, this results in an increased tax payment of $113 on a median priced home, or a county tax payment of approximately $1,271. Would you like me to repeat those numbers? Did I actually throw them out slow enough to?
Good. That was good.
Very good. Mike?
The first whereas, shouldn't that be today's date?
Yes.
Whereas amendments to the 2023 tentative budget and capital program were recommended and filed by the expanded Budget, Capital and Personnel Committee on, and you're stating that should be October 13th, not October 11th. I think we were optimistic when this got drawn. Thank you, Mike, for pointing that out. Could I have a motion to move resolution ID 11158 with these amounts forward? Moved by Rich John.
I had a question about one of the numbers.
Okay, look, why don't we get this on the floor and we'll correct that.
Second it then.
Motion by Rich, second by Veronica Pillar. Veronica.
Just to be clear, I thought that we had been in the recommended budget looking at a decrease in the tax payment on a median priced home. Is that not true? That's not true?
Yes, that's.
The percent, not the.
No, the payment.
The way the
Okay.
resolution is written, though, it's comparing last year to this year. It's comparing 2021 to 2022, which is an increase if you compare because the median home value increased.
Oh, right. Okay,
That's
never mind.
the
Yeah.
difference. Mhm.
Thank you.
And can I add something? So for, as we all know here, but if anybody's watching in the public, then, the reassessments throughout the county, don't happen all at once. So there are some people that will see an actual decrease in their taxes for at least this year, right?
Thanks, Ann. Further discussion on the motion? No further discussion. Well, this will move it forward to a scheduled hearing and further resolution down the line.
Ready to vote?
Are we ready to vote?
Shauna Black.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion.
Yes.
Rich John.
Yes.
Dan Klein.
Yes.
Ann Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Greg Mezzi.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
Mike Sigler.
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
Yes.
11 ayes, 0 noes. Motion passes.
Mr. Lane.
I had a question about the public hearing on the 7th. We had a forum before a couple of weeks ago, and I thought the format being virtual, not being able to see the questioners and only hear them was very problematic. So is this public hearing going to be in chambers? Is that at our regular meeting? What is that night?
Kathy's motioning yes.
Is that a regular meeting night?
Just be the official public hearing. It'll be the same format as this. So members of the public can join us in person or virtually.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for asking that, Mike, and clarifying it. Any further comments, questions? I thank you all for your patience tonight. Mike Sigler, now I know why you just didn't want to give this spot up a few years ago.
I was going to say at the beginning of the meeting, the last time this happened, you could be there for a month. Yeah. Just keep it
God
down.
forbid. Thank you all. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Second, I guess we're done. Thank you.
Thank
Holy,
you,
can I tell
Lee.
Best run meeting, really, of all
Good
this.
job, Lee.
Sometimes
Yeah.
what you think it's gonna do is completely different.
My job's over. I'm done.